Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. President Donald Trump threatening to add a 50% additional tariff on China. Now that's if the communist regime won't take back its 34% tariff on the U.S. by tomorrow. And President Trump promising an economic revolution. As voters and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle react to Trump's tariffs, what comes next? We speak with political experts. The president is meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House right now. Netanyahu is the first foreign leader to visit Trump since he unleashed tariffs on countries all around the world. And turning to the Supreme Court, President Trump asking to pause a judge's order to bring back an illegal immigrant wrongly deported to El Salvador. The return deadline is tonight.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in the U.S. today. He's meeting with President Donald Trump at the White House right now. Now, the president commented on the upcoming talks yesterday.
We're going to talk about trade, and we're going to talk about the obvious subject. You know what the obvious subject is?
Do you have any news for us
I'm trying to do trade just to keep it down. No, look, there's a lot of things going on with the Middle East right now that have to be silenced. You know, we had no problem with the Middle East. Everything was done. We had no problem with Iran. We had no problem with anybody. And then you had October 7th. And that was all because Iran, as you know, was not giving money to anybody because they had no money. Now they have a lot of money, so we'll see what happens.
Netanyahu said yesterday he hopes Trump will ease the tariffs. Israeli goods exports to the U.S. now face a 17% tariff. The U.S. is Israel's closest ally and largest single trading partner. Israel moved to cancel its remaining tariffs on U.S. imports last week. Netanyahu also said he would talk to Trump about the Israeli hostages still held captive in Gaza. The Prime Minister also met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick yesterday. Those talks focused also on new tariffs imposed on Israel. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke to reporters today to reassure his nation amid President Trump's tariffs. Carney called the duties levied on his country's products unjustified and a threat to the Canadian economy.
And those measures are going to hit a lot of people's savings, including their retirement savings. And as much as this is unfortunate, it was not unforeseen. This is what we have been concerned about. And indeed, this is what we've been trying to warn the President of the United States about. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There may be some tough days ahead for Canadians, but I also want to reassure that we are prepared. We foresaw this. And borrowing on my experience helping to guide Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, and helping the United Kingdom weather the impacts of Brexit, we have been taking steps, and we are continuing to take steps to protect Canadians.
Carney added that Trump's tariffs would hit the U.S. economy as well, claiming duties on Canadian imports had increased the probability of a recession. Carney also said he had spoken to Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem and Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne today about turbulence in the markets. The Canadian Prime Minister expressed confidence in both officials. President Donald Trump threatening to add a 50% additional tariff onto China. That's if the communist regime won't take back its 34% tariff on the U.S. by tomorrow. Trump posted on Truth Social this morning, blaming China's, quote, already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation, and saying if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April 8th, 2025, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50%, effective April 9th. He threatens to terminate all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with the U.S. while starting talks with other countries. Trump also said that he spoke to the Japanese Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, this morning. He said Ishiba is sending a top team to negotiate the tariffs. Ishiba called for patience today while speaking at a budget committee session in Parliament.
We must continue to strongly ask U.S. President Donald Trump to lower tariffs against Japan, but the results won't come overnight. As such, the government must take all available means to ensure that domestic measures are carried out.
Ishiba called Trump's decision to impose tariffs on Japan, quote, extremely disappointing and regrettable. The Japanese Prime Minister added that he was willing to visit the United States for a meeting with Trump as soon as possible. Trump hit Japanese auto imports with a 25% duty last week and a reciprocal 24% tariff on other Japanese goods. Negotiations over retaliation. European Union ministers broadly agreed today that the bloc should prioritize sitting at the negotiating table than hitting back at the U.S. over new reciprocal tariffs. The agreement came even as the group prepared the first set of targeted countermeasures.
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners. Because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table.
The 27-nation bloc faces 25% import tariffs on steel and aluminum and cars and reciprocal tariffs of 20% for almost all other goods. Trade ministers met in Luxembourg today to debate the EU's response. The bloc is likely to approve this week an initial set of targeted countermeasures on up to $28 billion of U.S. imports. But even that move has proven challenging. President Trump has threatened a 200% counter tariff on EU alcoholic drinks if the bloc goes ahead with an earmarked 50% duty on U.S. bourbon. Meanwhile, Elon Musk said Saturday that he would like to see 0 tariffs between the United States and Europe.
Effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America, that would be that's what I hope occurs, and also more freedom of people to move between Europe and North America.
Zimbabwe has suspended all tariffs on all U.S. goods. The move comes a few days after the White House imposed an 18% rate on imports from the African country. The country's president wrote on X on Saturday that tariffs are a useful tool for safeguarding domestic employment and industrial sectors. But he wrote that the country maintains a policy of fostering friendly relations with all nations. Zimbabwe's main trading partners are South Africa, the United Arab Emirates, and China, but it does export tobacco and rice to the United States. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has addressed the recent 32% U.S. tariff on Taiwanese imports, warning of its economic impact.
面对美国的对等关税，
To address the reciprocal tariffs by the U.S., Taiwan has no plans to adopt retaliatory tariffs. There will be no change in corporate investment commitments to the U.S. as long as they are consistent with national interests. But we must ensure the U.S. clearly understands Taiwan's contributions to U.S. economic development. More importantly, we must actively seek to understand changes in the global economic situation, strengthen Taiwan-U.S. industry cooperation, elevate the status of Taiwan industries in global supply chains.
In a recorded message, he announced 5 government strategies to counter the move. The steps include tariff negotiations, support for affected industries, long-term development plans, strengthen Taiwan-U.S. cooperation, and industry listening tours. While Taiwan won't retaliate with tariffs, Lai stressed the need for unity and resilience, urging bipartisan support to safeguard Taiwan's export-driven economy. He emphasized that despite the setback, Taiwan remains globally competitive and committed to strengthening economic ties with the U.S. And President Donald Trump has asked the Supreme Court to temporarily halt a judge's order. It requires his administration to return by the end of the day a Salvadoran man wrongly deported to El Salvador. U.S. District Judge Paul Lacinas on Friday ordered the administration to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia by the end of today. The judge had found that the U.S. government had no lawful authority to detain and deport him. A lower federal appeals court this morning declined to freeze that order. The Justice Department, in a Supreme Court filing, said the judge's order amounted to judicial overreach. And the Trump administration vows to continue fighting court orders all the way to the highest level. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi criticized the district judges taking legal action against President Trump's executive decisions.
It's basically a game of whack-a-mole with these district court judges around the country who have a tremendous amount of power. They believe they do, but that's why we're appealing all of these cases, of course, up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Just since January 20th, we've had over 170 lawsuits filed against us. That should be the constitutional crisis right there. 50 injunctions. They're popping up every single day, trying to control his executive power, trying to control where he believes our tax dollars should be allocated.
Bondi told Fox News yesterday that Trump would comply with the law. But she said Trump was elected with an overwhelming majority because the American people want what he campaigned on, and he's implementing that agenda at a rapid speed. 2 border agents face charges for allegedly taking bribes and letting people in without proper documents. The agents were assigned to the busiest port of entry in the U.S. The 2 agents were assigned to the San Isidro port of entry in San Diego. Investigators say they found evidence on their phones of communication with smugglers and discovered unexplained deposits in their bank accounts. Prosecutors say the agents waved through dozens of vehicles illegally. An attorney for one of the agents said the case is still in its early stages and his client has the presumption of innocence. Now, it's not clear if the other agent has obtained legal representation. Investigators arrested the agents after detained migrant smugglers admitted they worked with border agents. Coming up next, President Donald Trump promising an economic revolution. Now, as voters and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle react to Trump's tariffs, what comes next? We'll be speaking with political experts after the break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms.
Thank you.
Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters? It's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast?
No thanks, we're good.
They're always in their own world.
How'd you get there?
Twice the work. Twice the surprises.
Just try it.
But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling.
I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Thanks for staying with us. The House this week will take up the Senate budget blueprint. That's the next step in the GOP effort to implement President Trump's agenda. Now, the Senate advanced the resolution in a mostly party-line vote early Saturday morning of 51 to 48. The only Republican opponents were Rand Paul of Kentucky and Susan Collins of Maine. However, there have already been warning signs that pushing the blueprint through the House could face challenges. Speaker Mike Johnson and GOP leaders are working to secure support. Fiscal conservatives have expressed concerns over spending levels and the proposed debt ceiling increase of up to $5 trillion. The centerpiece of the Senate plan is making Trump's 2017 personal income tax cuts permanent. President Trump said yesterday that China was close to approving a deal for the sale of TikTok. He said the communist nation backed out over the new reciprocal tariffs on Chinese imports. TikTok is required to divest its U.S. assets or face a nationwide ban. Trump has effectively paused that ban until mid-June. Parent company ByteDance said last week that it was discussing a potential solution with the U.S. government. It says any agreement with Washington will be subject to approval under Chinese law. Trump last week extended the deadline for TikTok to divest from its Beijing-based parent company by 75 days. Several bidders have expressed interest in purchasing the social media app. Those include Amazon and a group led by OnlyFans founder Tim Stokely. And now we're going to keep our eye on President Trump's tariffs. Today, the president posted on Truth Social saying that his policies have already brought in $5 trillion of investment and that this is an economic revolution that the U.S. will ultimately win. Now, it's not unanimous support from the Republican Party, though. Some GOP senators have signed on to bills that would limit Trump's trade powers. And now joining us to discuss this, we've got Jessica Anderson. She's the president of conservative super PAC, the Sentinel Action Fund. And we've also got Robin Byro, former Obama regional campaign director and Democratic strategist. Jessica, Robin, thank you both so much for being on today. Big swings we're seeing in the stock market today. Now, if there's one thing the stock market doesn't like, it's uncertainty. So, Jessica, are Republicans concerned by any of these immediate ripple effects from the tariffs?
Well, thanks so much for having me today. I think Republicans are in a wait and see mode, but most of us are unified in remembering exactly how we got here, which is that the Biden administration oversaw a $1.2 trillion trade deficit just this last year before President Trump took office. And so when you look at the president's economic agenda, it's not just tariffs. Yes, those were the first out the gate, but hopefully Congress will follow suit, passing the tax cuts extension from the TCJA, a large regulatory agenda, having more American energy, and less dependence on our foreign countries for American energy. So when you take all of those elements together, you begin to have the ingredients for a robust economic turnaround. Now, if it's just tariffs and we're only 3 days in, I think a lot of Republicans want to wait and see what happens. Obviously, no one wants the market to fall out from the bottom, but we do need to do something different and try to help all Americans, regardless of their socioeconomic background.
Robin, Republicans saying they're waiting and seeing. How are Democrats reacting to all this uncertainty right now?
Not too well. My party right now, as you see, is chicken little, the sky is falling. But I myself personally am in a wait and see approach because I've got friends who have calmer heads who have advised me, just let's see how this plays. Myself, I'll be honest with you, I was panicking a little bit this morning when the Dow futures overnight showed about a 1,500 point decline. But then as we saw this morning, it spiked up and then crashed by another 700 points before I could even react. So, that told me just personally that I need to wait and see how this plays out. The markets do not like volatility like this. What I would advise people at home is treat this like gambling at this point, not investing. And I personally don't gamble, so I am not going to be doing anything with my stocks right now. I'll be holding.
All right, well, taking a look to Capitol Hill, we're seeing a bill in the Senate to essentially require congressional approval for tariff increases. So it's basically a check here on the president's power. We're seeing several Republican senators signing on, but the White House says that Trump would veto it if it came onto his desk. Jessica, do you see a risk here of a fracturing of the party?
Well, look, I think the bigger picture is how do these moves in Q1 of the Trump administration impact the midterms? And if you have senators like Collins and Tillis who are up for re-election making moves against the president, does that hurt them in the long run? Our polling suggests just the opposite, which is that the working class voter in North Carolina, in Maine, even in Michigan and Georgia, for critical midterm battleground Senate races, that they support President Trump's movement on tariffs, and they would support candidates and future elected officials that support him. So I think there's a lot that's at play here politically. I would also just say to the comments about how to view the market, there's a larger debate going on in the Republican Party, which the United States Senate has to figure out where it falls on this, which is the market God? Is the market the real arbitrator of success in America? And there's a lot in the Make America Great movement that believe it's not. And that is not how we view success for families, certainly not working class families. So I think the Senate is in a lot of ways the partner to President Trump, but it's also going to need to figure out its own Republican orthodoxy and whether it's on board with what 77 million Americans voted for or not.
Now, Robin, this Senate bill, it's unlikely to actually become law, but what's the significance to you here that we saw Senator Chuck Grassley introduce this bill alongside Senator Maria Cantwell, and then we're seeing senators like Jerry Moran, Lisa Murkowski, Mitch McConnell all signing on?
It is not something to be overlooked. There are concerns, and I myself would be a proponent of having some checks on power here, because I'll be honest with you, one of the first things I thought of today when I was watching things swing wildly, like it's the Wild West here on the markets, was that it's wild to me that one man can influence global markets to this extent. I would like to see maybe the power limited in that regard.
And Jessica, you just touched on this, but I want you to go deeper because there's online discourse right now about whether or not these tariffs really are what Trump's base voted for. In your view, and based on your conversations with Republican voters, is this what the majority voted for?
Yes, very much so. And the reason is maybe not as technical as some economists may want it to be right now. It's really just the fundamental question of, is America being taken advantage of? And the low propensity first-time Trump voter that turned out to create a new coalition for Donald Trump's presidency and all those House and Senate candidates that they brought across the line, it was so clear that this was about America asserting its dominance globally, not being taken advantage of by trade practices or even from a national security standpoint. So yes, we specifically asked things like, are you comfortable paying more for your goods, for, the cost of avocados? That was a big one on the campaign trail. And the answer is yes. If that means our border is more secure, that the flow of fentanyl is going down, that we're not being taken advantage of by other countries, by the European Union, et cetera, then a lot of these working class first-time Trump-based voters are very much willing to take the trade-off. I'd also note they may not be the ones that are invested in the stock market. So again, it goes back to this larger conversation that the right is having, which is the market the arbitrator of success in America? And there's a lot in the America First movement that would say no.
Robin, what's your response to Jessica's ideas there?
I think she brings some good points about the market, maybe not being the full arbiter of how things are going in America. The cost of goods has something to do with that, because President Trump, when he was on the campaign trail, promised, and we all saw the signs, higher prices equals Kamala, lower prices equals Trump. I saw those signs outside of every Walmart that I went to across the country. when Americans head to the grocery stores and they can see that the average price for a carton of eggs right now, 1 dozen eggs, is $4.46. You can Google it. The average price for 1 gallon of gas is $3.26 as of yesterday. Those are statistics from AAA, who studies those. They're not going to be happy with higher prices than what we had before the election.
Robin, to your point there, the president has emphasized, we've seen him emphasize it over and over again, that there's going to be pain. It won't be an easy period of time,
Yes.
but to hang tough, and that the U.S. is going to get through this, and that the U.S. is ultimately going to come out better for it in the end. From what you've heard, Robin, from Democrats, do they have the confidence in the president to deliver that?
It's not so much as confidence as it is patience. And I'm not hearing that as much from Democrats. They're impatient already. They were impatient before this. They were mad that we lost the election, let's be clear. But my Republican friends, and I have a lot of them, are telling me that this is not what they voted for, that they voted for a better economy, and that they're dissatisfied with sort of things being done with a wrecking ball with DOGE right now, that they were promised surgical strikes of removals and downsizing of the government, not the chainsaw approach that we saw from Elon Musk.
Jessica, to Robin's point there, a Wall Street Journal poll from last week found that 54% of Americans surveyed were against Trump's tariffs. What have you been hearing? Are Republicans confident in the president? Are they patient?
I think a lot of Republicans are willing to let Trump move forward with his economic agenda. It's 3 market days into this change. The change that it's needed, it's not going to happen overnight. It took decades of overspending and stimulus spending, to be honest, that got us to the place that we are today. And so when you look at the fullness of the Trump economic package, it's tariffs as one piece. And then it's those extending the personal income tax cuts that we know are moving through Congress now. It's a large deregulatory agenda, and it's producing America's own energy so we're not dependent upon others. I think when you take in all 4 elements, Republicans are more likely to give the president the benefit of the doubt and see. Now, there's some questions about the sequencing. Should tax cuts have gone first and tariffs gone second? And I think all of that are good policy conversations to have. But the reality is none of this was a surprise. Everything that the president is doing today, everything that Congress is pushing through today was actively talked about on the campaign trail. Those 77 million Americans that voted for this knew what they were voting for. It wasn't just a vote against Obama. It was a vote against Biden, but a vote for Trump. And so I think you can see that there's going to be a little bit of rope that's left as we have the coming days, and hopefully Congress follows suit and gets those tax cuts across the finish line. And then we'll really see, what do the markets look like? What does the cost of living look like? And is life better for all Americans?
So Jessica, if there's one takeaway you want our viewers to come away with from this discussion, what would it be?
Well, I would say wait it out, or if you're going to make any action in the market, it's to buy the dip, right? But I think wait it out. Let's give it a little bit more time. I think continue to put pressure on Congress to pass the extension of the TCJA, the personal income tax cuts. Continue to monitor what the administration is doing on the deregulatory front. Again, Treasury Secretary Bassett had this comment over the weekend that I thought was fantastic, which is 86% of our entire American economy is based up of things other than tariffs. So there is a lot of economic growth and improvement and strength that can come outside of the tariff space. So let's focus on that while tariffs evens out. We've already seen 50 countries reach out to the White House over the weekend, including U.S. allies Israel and Taiwan, wanting to renegotiate their own reciprocal tariffs. Let's see where we're at by the end of the week and give the president some more time here.
Robin, what's your most important central message to viewers out there?
Be safe with your money. When you're looking at making investments, think of this more like gambling, not so much as investments. Be careful. I would not invest my entire retirement savings into this right now. And the most important takeaway that I want the viewers to come away with is that nobody out there knows when the bottom is. Don't pay attention to any pundits on TV that are telling you this is the bottom. That is not true. Just wait and see.
Wait and see.
I agree with that.
All right, well, seems to be a theme. And we'll wait and see for President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's presser later today. I'm sure something interesting will come out of that as well. Jessica Anderson, Robin Byro, thank you so much for coming on, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, thousands rally in Paris to back Marine Le Pen after a court banned her from elections. The ruling has sparked debate in France over fairness and political motives. We'll be right back.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air conditioner. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
First time that I went to see him, a lot of stuff came into my mind because I wasn't prepared at all. I know the first 3 months of his life were really important, and I wanted to be there all the time for him. First time he was like, "Daddy, Daddy." That was one of his first words. He grew up so quick. He just surprised me every day. He's really smart. I really think he can be an astronaut, president. But I'm gonna support him for wherever he wants to be. Whether he wanna be a photographer, musician, whatever. As a father, I guess you don't focus on you. I put himself first. That's what a dad does.
Thanks for staying with us. A Ukrainian delegation is set to visit the U.S. this week. That's to move forward with the negotiations for a minerals deal. Ukraine's deputy prime minister announced this week's meetings on X today. She says the goal here is to align on project selection, legal frameworks, and long-term investment mechanisms. President Trump wants to use Ukraine's rare earth minerals as a financial guarantee for the money the U.S. is sending. Negotiations halted after Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky got into a disagreement during a meeting in D.C. After the talks, Trump and Zelensky both agreed to meet again. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is going to Panama this week. It comes after a deal to sell ports on the Panama Canal to U.S. firm BlackRock has not gone through. The Hong Kong-based company CK Hutchison agreed to sell its stake in the canal, but was relentlessly pressured by the Chinese Communist regime to back off from the deal. President Trump sees control of the canal as a matter of national security. His views here are that the Chinese Communist Party holds too much influence over it and that Panama has violated its neutrality treaty. While Hegseth is in Panama, he plans to attend a security conference and meet Panama's president. The U.S. also plans to continue ongoing joint military exercises with Panama this week. Hegseth and Panama's president in February agreed to expand military cooperation and safeguard the canal. The U.S. has blocked the import of sea salt from a major South Korean sea salt farm. This is after the farm was accused of using slave labor. Customs and Border Protection issued an order against Taepyeong Salt Farm, which says there are reasonable indications of the use of forced labor there. The company is located on the island of Sinan, where most of South Korea's sea salt products are made. Taepyeong is the country's largest salt farm. It produces approximately 16,000 tons of salt a year. South Korean officials said this was the first time a foreign government had blocked imports over concerns of forced labor. And amid President Trump's tariffs, Britain has watered down net zero emission rules for vehicle sales in a bid to support their automotive industry. But critics say these changes are tinkering around the edges and will not help the industry. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson reports.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer plans to back British brilliance with support for the electric vehicle car industry. He relaxed sales rules for electric vehicles amid fears President Trump's tariffs on cars will hurt the British car industry.
We're going to help car companies based in Britain reach the targets in a way that supports growth. We're going to cut down any fines, which I don't want or expect to see, by 20%, and any money that's raised will be invested directly back into support for the British car industry.
Currently, at least 28% of new cars sold in the UK must be electric. That target will continue to rise each year until 2030, when all new gas and diesel car sales will be banned. Every car a manufacturer sells in Britain that does not meet the latest emissions standards faces a fine. The fine was around $19,000 per car. Now, Starmer has reduced it to about $15,000. Additionally, manufacturers will now be given more freedom in how they will meet their yearly targets. If they don't sell enough electric vehicles in one year, they can make it up by selling more the next year. Starmer also announced that elite car manufacturers like Jaguar and Aston Martin will not need to stop selling gas and diesel cars by 2030. However, Reform UK party leader Nigel Farage said this isn't going to make much difference for the car industry.
Last year was our lowest level of car production since 1954. The EV mandates, the electric vehicle mandates that were put by the last Conservative government have been destroying the car industry. And all the Prime Minister's doing this afternoon, frankly, is fiddling around the edges. Even without America and tariffs, our car industry is in crisis.
Starmer and his government have repeatedly said they will not implement reciprocal tariffs.
It's in nobody's interest for there to be an escalating trade war, and this constant ratcheting up of tariffs is bad for global demand, it's bad for prices, which means that it's bad for British consumers.
Though they are still considering all options for how to respond. Starmer has spoken to the leaders of France, Germany, Canada and the European Commission in recent days as governments plot a response to the tariffs. He said they are looking to reduce trade barriers to maintain free and open trade across the world. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Marine Le Pen's supporters took to the streets in Paris yesterday, calling her election ban unfair. As the nationalist leader surges ahead in French presidential polls, some politicians label her ban a political decision. NTD's international correspondent David Vivez reports.
Thousands of supporters rallied over the weekend in central Paris to back French right-wing leader Marine Le Pen after a court ruling threatened her political future. Last week, a Paris court convicted Le Pen and other National Rally members of embezzling EU funds, sentencing her to a 5-year ban from running for office and a 2-year prison term, with 2 more years suspended. Protesters said that Le Pen's incapacity to be elected was the most problematic issue.
What we find unfair isn't the trial itself. It's the fact that the sentence takes effect immediately, despite the fact that she has appealed, as she has the right to. That appeal restores the presumption of innocence, and so it should be respected. The fact that the sentence is being applied immediately will prevent her from taking part in the next presidential election. This ineligibility removes a candidate from the next elections. And for me, it's really problematic.
Marine Le Pen emphasized that her movement would remain pacifist, following Martin Luther King's example.
We invite all French people committed to freedom to stand by our side in a pacifist and democratic resistance, a people's patriotic resistance.
With 37% of voters supporting her, Le Pen is ahead in the polls for the next presidential election. She deemed her sentence was not a court decision but a political one. The French Minister of the Interior agreed with this stance. He said Le Pen's conviction was due to, quote, red judges, meaning that a significant number of judges are opposed to Le Pen's party and are politically involved through the primary union of judges. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Coming up, watches are often luxury items, but they don't have to be. At an annual watch trade show in Geneva, some watchmakers are looking to make their timepieces more accessible. That story and more after this break.
What has lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return. Shen Yun.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
Life's daily battles are not meant to be fought alone.
We're not powerless, so long as we don't lose sight of what's important.
Don't be afraid to seize that moment to talk to your friends.
Cloud, you okay?
Because checking in on a friend can create a safe space.
The first step on our new journey. You coming?
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Seize the awkward. It's totally worth it.
Welcome back. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has met with the parents of another child who died of measles. Kennedy was in Texas yesterday to meet with the family of an 8-year-old girl. The child was unvaccinated and had no underlying health conditions. Texas health officials said she died on Thursday in the hospital from measles pulmonary failure. Kennedy also visited the family of a 6-year-old girl who died back in February. According to a post on Kennedy's X account, as of Sunday, there were 642 confirmed cases of measles across 22 different states. 499 of those were in Texas. Kennedy says he spoke with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and redeployed Centers for Disease Control teams to Texas. Rivers are rising and flooding continues to worsen across the U.S. South and Midwest areas. Already waterlogged communities are being further threatened, battered by days of relentless rain and wind. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the storms that have claimed at least 20 lives since last week.
Tragedy has struck multiple states. In Kentucky, a 9-year-old boy died after getting swept away in floodwaters while walking to catch his school bus. In Arkansas, a 5-year-old boy passed away after a tree fell on his family's home and trapped him. And in Missouri, a 16-year-old volunteer firefighter died in a crash while putting his life on the line, trying to rescue people caught in the storm. And the danger is not over. Forecasters warned that flooding could persist for days as torrential rains lingered over many states, including Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama. Tornadoes are possible in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Meanwhile, from Texas to Ohio on Sunday, utilities scrambled to shut off power and gas, while cities deployed sandbags to protect homes and businesses. Reeves, a small town in northwest Tennessee, was almost entirely underwater on Sunday after a nearby river overflowed. Many of the town's 200 residents had evacuated at the request of the fire department, but some decided to stay in their homes. Dominic Scott is worried about his father.
Came here to check on my dad. He lives right over there by the baseball fields, and ain't really heard nothing from him.
Scott says the water line is right up to his doorstep, and if it keeps raining, it'll probably flood the house.
Insurance companies around here does not insure flood insurance on anybody that lives in Reeves because we're too close to the river and the levees.
Meanwhile, in Ohio, the Ohio River is expected to rise and reach 60 feet by Monday. In north-central Kentucky, emergency officials ordered a mandatory evacuation for Falmouth and Butler, towns near the bend of the rising Licking River. 30 years ago, the river reached a record 50 feet, resulting in 5 deaths and 1,000 homes destroyed.
What's concerning for us and what we're watching for right now is the fact that south of us is still getting some rain, and the Licking River is one of the few rivers around here that flows north into the Ohio River.
In Frankfort, Kentucky, residents traveled around by boat as flooding caused havoc in the region. Drone videos taken Sunday show low-lying areas in the city flooded, including a bourbon whiskey distillery. Frankfort's swollen Kentucky River kept rising on Sunday, forcing officials to divert traffic and turn off utilities to businesses in the area. The river's relentless waters here have nearly swallowed up homes. Torrential flooding also struck in Montgomery, Kentucky. Entire blocks could be seen covered in floodwater in Dawson Springs, Kentucky over the weekend. Heavy rain and flash flooding are forecast to continue Monday and overnight into Tuesday across the southeast and Gulf Coast. With central Alabama at moderate risk, severe storms may bring damaging winds and isolated tornadoes. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Nearly 100 bomb threats made against a U.S.-based classical Chinese dance group who's behind these extensive attack campaigns, while a police investigation in Taiwan now reveals a possible link with China's tech giant Huawei. Here's a closer look at that.
New York-based Shen Yun Performing Arts is now touring Taiwan. However, several government agencies and organizations in Taiwan received a series of threatening emails. Those stated, quote, "There would be shootings or bombings if Shen Yun performances are not canceled." As of April 4th, a total of 13 such threats have been reported. Taiwan's Criminal Police Bureau has formed an cross-agency task force to investigate. They traced the source of the emails to the vicinity of a Huawei Research Institute in China's northwestern Xi'an city. According to the police in Taiwan, the emails could have been sent by people related to the Chinese tech giant Huawei. They didn't rule out the possibility that they were sent from the Chinese Communist Party's cyber army based in that area. Shen Yun is dedicated to the revival of China's 5,000 years of traditional culture. The performance depicts the ongoing persecution of spiritual group Falun Gong in mainland China that Beijing has been trying to cover up. The threatening emails in Taiwan are among about 100 targeting the company since last year when it toured the United States and Europe.
When we got leaked documents from China, from the Ministry of State Security and Ministry of Public Security, and they spoke of a well-coordinated and extensive effort to completely destroy Shen Yun and the broader Falun Gong community in the United States, a sort of endgame scenario. We've seen large-scale attacks in a campaign by the New York Times with no less than 10 articles attacking Shen Yun. And we've seen horrifying bomb threats, death threats, rape threats.
On March 30th, Shen Yun received a bomb threat hours before its last performance in Claremont, California. The venue was immediately evacuated. A similar evacuation took place at the John F. Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. on February 20th. The bomb threat, just as those made to other theaters, turned out to be fake. In response to a question from NTD regarding the bomb threat at the Kennedy Center, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt condemned such actions.
Don't disrupt it. This administration will take that very seriously and hold you accountable. We obviously condemn any violence or threats of violence against American institutions.
The State Department also denounced Beijing's intimidation campaign against Shen Yun. In a recent statement to the Epoch Times, the department says its annual International Religious Freedom Report documents incidents of interference against Falun Gong practitioners and Shen Yun Performing Arts in many countries.
And staying on the topic of Shen Yun Performing Arts, the company took theater goers in New York City on a journey through ancient China with NTD as a media sponsor. Audience members shared their reflections after watching the show. Take a look.
Shen Yun Performing Arts took the stage in front of a full house on both April 4th and the 5th at the David H. Koch Theater at Lincoln Center in New York City. In the audience was a representative of New York State Senator Stephen Chan, who honored the performers with a proclamation.
I really like they put some of the Asian stories inside all the dance moves, so that actually people can learn about the Chinese stories as well. Of course, the other dances are incredible.
I'm mesmerized by everything, the technique of the dancers, all of the storytelling, their unique expression and artistry, the costume, the interaction with technology. This is a wonderful, wonderful show. I think it's a spiritual energy that transpires from the dancers, because it's not just a dynamic, it's not just a movement, it comes from inside and it spreads through the audience.
It was breathtaking. I mean, the abilities of the dancers, and I mean, that must be so much hard work. And yeah, they were divine beings up there. They really were.
Shen Yun aims to revive 5,000 years of divinely inspired traditional Chinese culture and values from a time before communism. Through the performance, Shen Yun also reveals the brutal persecution of spirituality by the Chinese Communist Party. The company cannot perform in China as a result.
Someday you will return to China and you'll be able to have these types of dances and this type of greater level of freedom in China, where people can follow their dreams and actually be politically free, which would be a wonderful thing.
They're magnificent, and keep up the good work, and I hope the tradition continues. And it's hard to believe that this was suppressed in China, because to suppress something like this is really a crime.
The music was amazing, the dances were amazing, but what even impressed me even more was the message that they were giving, you know? The whole good versus evil, which is so important, especially in this atmosphere that we have in the world all over today.
Shen Yun will be performing at the David H. Koch Theater at Lincoln Center in New York City until April 13th. NTD News, New York.
President Donald Trump welcomed the LA Dodgers today at the White House. The World Series champions stood behind the president as he celebrated their championship win over the New York Yankees.
You showed America that it's not about individual glory, it's about the team digging deep and sprinting right through first base, and you did that all the time. I watch some games. I love baseball. I don't get to watch as much as I'd like, but you always see a spirit on this team. I think a lot of that has to do with the ownership and the management, frankly. But you see a spirit on the Dodgers that you don't see with a lot of teams. A lot of teams I turn on, I say, oh, let's forget it. When I turn on the Dodgers, I like to watch the team. And now that I've gotten to meet these guys personally, I like it even more.
Trump singled out several Dodgers for their achievements last season. The president praised star pitcher Shohei Ohtani for becoming baseball's first 50-50 player. Trump also honored outfielder Mookie Betts. Los Angeles Dodgers co-owner Mark Walter gave brief remarks as well. Pitcher Clayton Kershaw also presented President Trump with a Dodgers jersey with a number 47 on the back. The Dodgers play the Washington Nationals tonight at 6:45 Eastern. And moving on now, watches. They're often luxury items, but maybe they don't have to be. At an annual watch trade show in Geneva, some watchmakers are looking to make their timepieces more accessible. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on some of those more affordable accessories.
Times are changing at Watches and Wonders in Geneva. The prestigious trade show is renowned for its high-end timepieces, but some brands are focusing their strategies on affordability. Watchmaker Oris has reimagined its iconic model first launched in 1938 for pilots.
So, how do you stay relevant in these times? Well, actually, we want to make people smile. If you look at your watch and it doesn't cheer you up, you better put it away. Your watch must put a smile on your face, and that is why we do what we do.
Pieces at Watches and Wonders often go for tens of thousands of dollars or more. Oris's big crown models range between $2,000 and $4,000.
We have always made watches for people who love watches, but who can't necessarily spend a fortune on them. And we see that this is very relevant these days. It's about substance. It's about what you really get for your money.
Ming Liu is a watch journalist and industry expert. She says Oris is a good example of a wider trend.
You know, Oris's tagline is "Go your own way," and I think that really resonates with the younger audience. Sort of struggles and being entrepreneurial, and they've got some great entry-level watches.
Raymond Vile's latest release features moon phases, chronographs, and small seconds displays. The piece is part of its efforts to grow its clientele.
We can attract a large audience of watch experts and consumers who are passionate about watchmaking, but that cannot afford necessarily to spend over $5,000 and more dollars.
The Swiss watchmaker's Millésime collection is built around mechanical movements and priced with accessibility in mind.
Millésime collection is the collection we launched 18 months ago all over the world, for which we won the GPSG prize for the category challenge, which is the category that rewards product under 2,000 Swiss francs.
Liu says accessibility is key to welcoming new customers.
I think it's really important that there's an affordable price range, especially now. There has to be a sensitivity to the cost of living crisis, and just being sensitive to the fact that some of these watches are really expensive, but if you love watches and you're passionate about watches, you still want to get into them.
But time is running out at this year's show. Watches and Wonders ends today. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Up next, the Trump administration orders a new review on the acquisition of U.S. steel by Japan's Nippon Steel. That and more when we come back.
I'm Ilka. I live with my daughter and with my grandchildren. There's a sense of comfort that comes with eating a good meal. We try to make the most, of what we have. We have rent to pay, and then there are lights and there are gas. And while my daughter and I both work, it still just doesn't seem like there's enough to go around sometimes.
Every day, millions of our neighbors face hunger, including 1 in 5 children, and food costs keep rising. Please call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Your monthly support can fill plates with nutritious food for families across the country and in your community, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks and volunteers.
If you were over and playing with us, you were part of our family and you were going to eat. A real cook can take nothing and make something.
No one should ever have to wonder if they will have enough to eat, and our neighbors are working hard to feed their families every day. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger from coast to coast and in your own community. Use your credit card and you'll get this exclusive canvas grocery bag as a thank you for joining hands with people across America to help end hunger.
Some of the lessons that I hope that my family will take, it is important to treat people the way that you want to be treated.
I have carried on the tradition of loving people through food.
Please call right now or go online to make a monthly gift at helpfeedingamerica.org. Your support helps our neighbors bring food home to their families.
In 4 days. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children. She didn't know what to do.
Did you have a good day at school?
She gave them some broth without any bread.
There you go.
And kissed them all soundly.
Night night.
Good night. And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Fiona G. This afternoon, President Donald Trump is meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the war in Gaza, tariffs, and much more. And President Donald Trump threatens to add a 50% additional tariff on China. That's if the communist regime won't take back its 34% tariff on the U.S. by tomorrow. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney speaks to reassure his nation amid a U.S. tariff barrage. President Donald Trump's advisors say over 50 countries are eager to renegotiate. The Trump administration orders a new review on the acquisition of U.S. steel by Japan's Nippon Steel. And House Republican leadership will put the Senate-approved budget resolution to a vote this week on the House floor. Spending hawks have already said they would not support it. Rising rivers, flooded neighborhoods, communities in danger. Severe weather continues as the death toll rises from storms in the South and the Midwest. A U.S.-based dance company facing ongoing bomb threats. Police in Taiwan now trace the source of the threats to a city in northwestern China, where an institute of tech giant Huawei is located. More on that investigation.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
President Donald Trump threatening to add a 50% additional tariff onto China. That is if the communist regime doesn't take back its 34% tariff on the U.S. by tomorrow. Now, Trump posted on Truth Social this morning, blaming China's already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation, and also saying, quote, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April 8th, 2025, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th. He threatens to terminate all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with the U.S. while starting talks with other countries. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke to reporters today to reassure his nation amid President Trump's tariffs. Carney called the duties levied on his country's products unjustified and a threat to the Canadian economy.
And those measures are going to hit a lot of people's savings, including their retirement savings. And as much as this is unfortunate, it was not unforeseen. This is what we have been concerned about. And indeed, this is what we've been trying to warn the President of the United States about. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There may be some tough days ahead for Canadians, but I also want to reassure that we are prepared. We foresaw this. And borrowing on my experience helping to guide Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, and helping the United Kingdom weather the impacts of Brexit, we have been taking steps, and we are continuing to take steps to protect Canadians.
Carney added that President Trump's tariffs would hit the U.S. economy as well, claiming duties on Canadian imports had increased the probability of a recession. Carney also said that he had spoken to Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem and Finance Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne today about turbulence in the markets. The Canadian Prime Minister expressed confidence in both of those officials. Now, President Trump also said that he spoke to the Japanese Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, this morning. He said Ishiba is sending a top team to negotiate the tariffs. Ishiba called for patience today while speaking at a budget committee session in Parliament.
We must continue to strongly ask U.S. President Donald Trump to lower tariffs against Japan, but the results won't come overnight. As such, the government must take all available means to ensure that domestic measures are carried out.
Ishiba called Trump's decision to impose tariffs on Japan, quote, extremely disappointing and regrettable. The Japanese Prime Minister added that he was willing to visit the United States for a meeting with Trump as soon as possible. Now, President Trump hit Japanese auto imports with a 25% duty last week and a reciprocal 24% tariff on other Japanese goods. President Trump today also ordered a new review into the acquisition of U.S. steel by Japan's Nippon Steel. The deal was first blocked by former President Joe Biden back in January. Trump asked the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. to make the review. Now, in a presidential action issued by the White House, it said that the review would be done to identify potential national security risks associated with the proposed transaction and to provide adequate opportunity to the parties to respond to such concerns. The review should be completed within 45 days. And moving on now, negotiations over retaliation. European Union ministers broadly agreed today that the bloc should prioritize sitting at the negotiating table rather than hitting back at the U.S. over new reciprocal tariffs. The agreement came even as the group prepared the first set of targeted countermeasures.
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table.
The 27-nation bloc faces 25% import tariffs on steel and aluminum and cars, and reciprocal tariffs of 20% for almost all other goods. Trade ministers met in Luxembourg today to debate the EU's response. The bloc is likely to approve this week an initial set of targeted countermeasures on up to $28 billion of U.S. imports. But even that move has proven challenging. Trump has threatened a 200% counter tariff on EU alcoholic drinks if the bloc goes ahead with an earmarked 50% duty on U.S. bourbon. Meanwhile, Elon Musk said on Saturday that he would like to see 0 tariffs between the United States and Europe.
Effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America, and that would be that's what I hope occurs, and also more freedom of people to move between Europe and North America.
Zimbabwe has suspended all tariffs on U.S. goods. The move comes a few days after the White House imposed an 18% rate on imports from the African country. The country's president wrote on X on Saturday that tariffs are a useful tool for safeguarding domestic employment and industrial sectors, but he wrote that the country maintains a policy of fostering friendly relations with all nations. Zimbabwe's main trading partners are South Africa, the United Arab Emirates, and China, but it does export tobacco and rice to the U.S. Over to Taiwan, where President Lai Ching-te has addressed the recent 32% U.S. tariff on Taiwanese imports, warning of its economic impact.
面对美国的对等关税，
To address the reciprocal tariffs by the US, Taiwan has no plans to adopt retaliatory tariffs. There will be no change in corporate investment commitments to the US as long as they are consistent with national interests. But we must ensure the US clearly understands Taiwan's contributions to US economic development. More importantly, we must actively seek to understand changes in the global economic situation, strengthen Taiwan-US industry cooperation, elevate the status of Taiwan industries in global supply chains.
In a recorded message, he announced 5 government strategies to counter the move. The steps include tariff negotiations, support for affected industries, long-term development plans, strengthened Taiwan-U.S. cooperation, and industry listening tours. Now, while Taiwan will not retaliate with tariffs, Lai stressed the need for unity and resilience, urging bipartisan support to safeguard Taiwan's export-driven economy. He emphasized that despite the setback, Taiwan remains globally competitive and committed to strengthening economic ties with the U.S. Coming up, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has met with the parents of another child who died of measles over the weekend. And rising rivers flooded neighborhoods and communities in danger. Severe weather continues as the death toll rises from storms in the South and Midwest. That and more after the break.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today. Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches, me? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutVaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Welcome back to Newsroom. Rivers are rising and flooding continues to worsen across the U.S. South and Midwest regions. Already, waterlogged communities are being further threatened, battered by days of relentless rain and wind. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the storms that have claimed at least 20 lives since last week.
Tragedy has struck multiple states. In Kentucky, a 9-year-old boy died after getting swept away in floodwaters while walking to catch his school bus. In Arkansas, a 5-year-old boy passed away after a tree fell on his family's home and trapped him. And in Missouri, a 16-year-old volunteer firefighter died in a crash while putting his life on the line, trying to rescue people caught in the storm. And the danger is not over. Forecasters warned that flooding could persist for days as torrential rains lingered over many states, including Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama. Tornadoes are possible in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Meanwhile, from Texas to Ohio on Sunday, utilities scrambled to shut off power and gas, while cities deployed sandbags to protect homes and businesses. Reeves, a small town in northwest Tennessee, was almost entirely underwater on Sunday after a nearby river overflowed. Many of the town's 200 residents had evacuated at the request of the fire department, but some decided to stay in their homes. Dominic Scott is worried about his father.
Came here to check on my dad. He lives right over there by the baseball fields, and ain't really heard nothing from him.
Scott says the water line is right up to his doorstep, and if it keeps raining, it'll probably flood the house.
Insurance companies around here does not insure flood insurance on anybody that lives in Reeves because we're too close to the river and the levees.
Meanwhile, in Ohio, the Ohio River is expected to rise and reach 60 feet by Monday. In north-central Kentucky, emergency officials ordered a mandatory evacuation for Falmouth and Butler, towns near the bend of the rising Licking River. 30 years ago, the river reached a record 50 feet, resulting in 5 deaths and 1,000 homes destroyed.
What's concerning for us and what we're watching for right now is the fact that south of us is still getting some rain, and the Licking River is one of the few rivers around here that flows north into the Ohio River.
In Frankfort, Kentucky, residents traveled around by boat as flooding caused havoc in the region. Drone videos taken Sunday show low-lying areas in the city flooded, including a bourbon whiskey distillery. Frankfort's swollen Kentucky River kept rising on Sunday, forcing officials to divert traffic and turn off utilities to businesses in the area. The river's relentless waters here have nearly swallowed up homes. Torrential flooding also struck in Montgomery, Kentucky. Entire blocks could be seen covered in floodwater in Dawson Springs, Kentucky over the weekend. Heavy rain and flash flooding are forecast to continue Monday and overnight into Tuesday across the southeast and Gulf Coast. With central Alabama at moderate risk, severe storms may bring damaging winds and isolated tornadoes. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has met with the parents of another child who died of measles. Kennedy was in Texas yesterday to meet with the family of an 8-year-old girl. Now, that child was unvaccinated and had no underlying health conditions. Texas health officials said she died on Thursday in the hospital from measles pulmonary failure. Kennedy also visited the family of a 6-year-old girl who died back in February. According to a post on Kennedy's X account, as of Sunday, there were 642 confirmed cases of measles across 22 states. 499 of those were in Texas. Kennedy says he spoke with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and redeployed Centers for Disease Control teams to Texas. President Trump has asked the Supreme Court to temporarily halt a judge's order. It requires his administration to return by the end of the day a Salvadoran man wrongly deported to El Salvador. U.S. District Judge Paula Shinas on Friday ordered the administration to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia by the end of today. The judge had found that the U.S. government had no lawful authority to detain and deport him. A lower federal appeals court this morning declined to freeze that order. The Justice Department in a Supreme Court filing said the judge's order amounted to judicial overreach. And the Trump administration vows to continue fighting court orders all the way to the highest level. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi criticized the district judges taking legal action against President Trump's executive decisions.
It's basically a game of whack-a-mole with these district court judges around the country who have a tremendous amount of power. They believe they do, but that's why we're appealing all of these cases, of course, up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Just since January 20th, we've had over 170 lawsuits filed against us. That should be the constitutional crisis right there. 50 injunctions. They're popping up every single day, trying to control his executive power, trying to control where he believes our tax dollars should be allocated.
Bondi told Fox News yesterday that Trump would comply with the law, but she said Trump was elected with an overwhelming majority because the American people want what he campaigned on, and he's implementing that agenda at a rapid speed. And earlier this afternoon, President Donald Trump met with visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House and spoke to reporters. Here's a playback.
The trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly, We think it's the right thing to do, and we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. I recognize the position of the United States. It says, you know, we're allowing other countries to put tariffs on us, but we don't put tariffs on them. And, you know, I'm a free trade champion, and free trade has to be fair trade. And I think that's basically the position that you have put forward, Mr. President. We are going to eliminate the tariffs, and rapidly. I had the opportunity to speak to Secretary Lutnick yesterday. We talked about how we could effect this quickly, and I hope to bring a solution very quickly. We're not talking about intentions. We're not talking about you know, just words. We're talking about results. And those results are going to come. That's the first.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. President, what about the hostages deal?
Well,
Let him finish.
finish. I'm going to begin. We spoke about not only the hostages, but about Gaza. The hostages obviously is a human story of just unbearable agony. I speak to the families. I spoke to them yesterday. Spoke to another one when I was in Hungary before I came here. I speak to them every day. They're in agony. The hostages are in agony, and we want to get them all out. Steve Witkoff, President Trump's very able representative, helped us get a deal that got 25 out. We're working now on another deal that we hope will succeed. And we're committed to getting all the hostages out, but also eliminating the evil tyranny of Hamas in Gaza, and enabling the people of Gaza to freely make a choice to go wherever they want. I mean, they should have that choice. And the president put forward a vision, a bold vision, which we discussed as well, including the countries that might be amenable and are amenable to accepting Palestinians of their free choice if they choose to go there. And I think that's the second thing that we discussed. But the hostages came right on top. We also discussed the situation in Syria. We've had neighborly relations with Turkey that have deteriorated, and we don't want to see Syria being used by anyone, including Turkey, as a base for attack in Israel. Turkey is a country that has a great relationship with the United States. The president has a relationship with the leader of Turkey. We discussed how we can avoid this conflict in a variety of ways, and I think we can't have a better interlocutor than the President of the United States for this purpose. And of course, we also discussed Iran. Look, we're both united in the goal that Iran does not ever get nuclear weapons. If it could be done diplomatically in a full way, the way it was done in Libya, I think that would be a good thing. But whatever happens, we have to make sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. That's the end of my speech.
Mr. President, we're having direct talks with, wait a minute, wait. We're having direct talks with Iran, and they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. And the obvious is not something that I want to be involved with, or frankly, that Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. So we're going to see if we can avoid it. But it's getting to be very dangerous territory. And hopefully those talks will be successful. And I think it would be in Iran's best interest if they are successful. We hope that's going to happen. And we had just a lot of good talks on a lot of things. I appreciate very much what you said about the tariffs. We've been ripped off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. We can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in the seat right here. Not your seat, but this seat. They allowed things to happen to our country that they shouldn't have allowed to happen on trade and other things, many other things. I mean, look at what's happened with our last president, where he allowed millions of people to come into our country with an open border. Who would want an open border? How stupid was that? But he allowed millions and millions of people, And of the millions, and I think it was 21 million people, but let's say 3 of them were serious criminals, serious murderers and drug dealers and gang members and people from jails. All the jails emptied out right into our country, right along the open border on Mexico, generally the Mexico. They came in from Canada too, by the way, a lot. But generally speaking, on the southern border. And what a shame it is that we are now working very hard to get them out, get the criminals out, get the murderers out, the drug dealers, the mentally insane, get them out. They dropped the mentally insane in our country too. And this was all done by the Biden administration. It's a disgrace that we have to work so hard. And then we have judges that try and protect these people, but they didn't protect us when the people were being let in. But to get them out is never easy with these people. So I think we're doing a great job. The border is the best it's ever been. It's even as strong as it was. I had a great, solid border. I think it might even be tougher right now and stronger. So people are coming into our country, but they're coming in legally. We have a legal process, and we have that moving along properly because we need people to come into our country, but we want people that can love our country and cherish our country. So that's where we are. And with that, any questions?
Mr. President, the European Union back into the markets today, and would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many, many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals. And in certain cases, they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. There'll be fair deals. As you know, I spoke this morning with the Prime Minister of Japan, and we had a very good conversation. They're coming. And I said, one thing, you're going to have to open up your country because we sold no cars, like 0 cars in Japan, and they sold millions of cars into our country. They don't really take our agriculture, a little bit of it just to keep us slightly happy, but they don't take what they're supposed to be taking. So we have a great relationship with Japan. We're going to keep it that way, but they're coming in to meet, and other countries are coming in. With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way. And I have a great relationship with President Xi. I hope it's going to stay that way. I have great respect for China. But they can't do this. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed, what they've done to our system. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. And the reason is that people allowed it to get that way. So we'll be talking to China. We'll be talking to a lot of different countries. And I think, you know, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last. The people that were in the Oval Office put America last, and we're not going to stand for it. Yeah.
Talks with Iran.
2 questions. Do you expect any of these deals to be made before April 9th? And secondly, there have been some mixed messages from your administration. You're talking about negotiations, and yet others in your administration are saying that these tariffs are actually permanent. What is the action? Well,
it could be. They can both be true. There can be permanent tariffs, and there can also be negotiations because there are things that we need beyond tariffs. We need open borders. You know, we almost had a deal with China where we're going to open up China. It was almost done. Some of you remember it during my first term, and it was very disappointing. We ended up making a great deal. $50 billion worth of product was sold. $50 billion. You'd like that in Israel. And I made that deal, but it wasn't the deal that I wanted. It was the deal that I wanted was that, plus they were going to open up China so that our companies could go into China and compete with other countries and China for the, you know, for a large number of people. And at the very end, that deal was terminated, and we went to a piece of the deal. And there are a lot of things outside of tariffs, but tariffs are very important. But there are a lot of things like opening up countries that were totally closed. China's essentially a closed country. In fact, it is a closed country. And what they do is they charge tariffs so that if you sell cars or if you sell anything, nobody's going to buy it because the price is out of control. But that's true with a lot of other countries also. So we're going to get fair deals and good deals with every country, and if we don't, we're going to have nothing to do with them. They're not going to be allowed to participate in the United States.
Mr. President,
we have time. This gentleman is all day long.
Mr. President, thank you for the chance. Many of Palestinian Americans who voted for you and not for Biden because you've promised them to end the war in Gaza.
Very honored by that vote, too.
The war is still going on and there's no hostage deal. Do you have any update on that?
Well, I'd like to see the war stop, and I think the war will stop at some point that won't be in the too distant future. Right now we have a problem with hostages. We're trying to get the hostages out. We got quite a few of them out, but it's a long process. It shouldn't be that long. We have a big problem that we've done. I think I'll ask Pete to maybe talk about it for a second, because a lot of people are asking. The Houthis, we've been very tough and very successful militarily. We've really damaged them badly. These were people shooting down ships and other things, by the way, flying objects like airplanes. And we've put a major hurt on the Houthis, which nobody's been able to do. We've really hit them hard, and they know it, and they don't know what to do. And it's every night, night after night. And we've gotten many of their leaders and their experts. They're experts on missiles. I mean, they actually make missiles. Nobody thought that. But they make missiles. They're highly sophisticated, and they're very tough. But they've been very badly damaged. Nobody else was able to do that but us. Pete, you want to discuss that, please?
Yes, sir. It's been a bad 3 weeks for the Houthis, and it's about to get worse. It's been a devastating campaign, whether it's underground facilities, weapons manufacturing, bunkers, troops in the open, air defense assets. We are not going to relent, and it's only to get more unrelenting until the Houthis declare they will stop shooting at our ships. And we've been very clear with the Iranians as well. They should not continue to provide support to the Houthis, and that message has been made very clear. So we have a lot more options and a lot more pressure to apply, and we know, because we see the reports, how devastating this campaign has been in them, and we will not relent.
We have a great military. There's no military like our military. And despite Biden having given a lot, but nevertheless a pretty small piece, but it was a lot of our military away in Afghanistan, and one of the dumbest situations, I think, and maybe the most embarrassing situation we've ever been involved in, that short period of time in Afghanistan. What a disgrace that was, but left a lot of our military behind, left. You see them in their annual parades where they're parading trucks that are armor-plated and different things that they can't. But it's many billions of dollars we left behind. But despite that, we have a tremendous military. That was a very small portion, because we rebuilt the military during my first term. And we have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong, because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military. We're cutting other things that were under DOGE, but under a lot of other. When you look at a woman getting $2 billion for environmental, and it had nothing to do with environmental, and they had $100 in the bank, and they give her $2 billion. Many of those cases, all that stuff is going to be cut out. But we are getting a very, very powerful military. We have things under order now, the likes of which we've never had before. We've never had the kind of aircraft, the kind of missiles, anything that we have ordered. And it's in many ways too bad that we have to do it, because hopefully we're not going to have to use it. but the military is very, very powerful, and it's going to remain that way.
How do you...
Mr. President, do you please? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask you about Iran, because this is the first time we hear that the U.S. is having a direct contact with the Iranians. Is it possible to give us some more information at what level the U.S. is represented?
High level, very high level.
And
we're dealing with the Iranians. We have a very big meeting on Saturday, and we're dealing with them directly. You know, a lot of people say, oh, maybe you're going through surrogates or you're not dealing directly, you're dealing through other countries. No, we're dealing with them directly, and maybe a deal is going to be made. That would be great. It'd be really great for Iran, I can tell you that. But hopefully, we're not going to have to get into that. We are meeting very importantly on Saturday at almost the highest level, and we'll see how it works out. Please.
How do you ensure, Mr. President, that these tariffs don't drive U.S. trading partners into the hands of the Chinese? That they
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. If they want to be in the hands of the U.S., they don't want to be in the hands of the Chinese. And the Chinese have turned out to be really not very good at that. People that are with us, they're with us. But we cannot be taken advantage of any longer. I used to watch these deals for years. I've been talking about it for years. You know, I've been talking about it for 35 years, how our country is being ripped off. I mean, 30 years ago it was Japan, then it was something else, then it was another group, then it was China. China's doing the best job of it, frankly. And it's just not going to happen, not going to happen.
Mr. President, you said it
the EU has said that they have offered 0 for 0 tariffs on cars and industrial goods. Is that not enough?
Well, the EU, no, it's not. The EU has been very tough over the years. I always say it was formed to really do damage to the United States in trade. That's the reason it was formed. It was formed with all of the countries from Europe, I guess most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And they formed together to create a little bit of a monopoly situation, to create a unified force against the United States for trade. So they have NATO, which is largely the same countries, and they took advantage of us dollar-wise and militarily until I got there. You know, I was able to get $600 billion from NATO, where they paid NATO because most of these nations weren't even paying. We were paying for NATO, so we're paying them to guard them militarily, and they're screwing us on trade. So that's not a good combination. So now it's really turned around. It's the opposite, and the European Union's been very bad to us. They don't take our cars, like Japan in that sense. They don't take our agricultural product. They don't take anything practically. And yet they send millions of cars in a year, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, BMWs. They're sending millions and millions of cars into the U.S., but we don't have a car that's been sold to the European Union or other places, but let's go for the European Union. And it's not going to be that way. It's got to be fair and reciprocal. It's got to be fair. It's not fair. We have a deficit with the European Union of $350 billion. And it's going to disappear fast. And one of the reasons and one of the ways that that can disappear easily and quickly is they're going to have to buy our energy from us because they need it. They're going to have to buy it from us. They can buy it. We can knock off $350 billion in 1 week. They have to buy and commit to buy a like amount of energy. And we have that. You know, we have more energy than any country in the world. I don't know if you know that. He knows everything, but the one thing he may not know, we have more energy than any country in the world. We have more of every kind of energy, every form of energy, from oil and gas to coal. And people talk about, I call it beautiful, clean coal. As you know, Germany is opening up a coal plant a week. They tried the windmills and it didn't work. They tried all the other solutions and they were ready to go out of business. Now they're doing a coal plant a week. China is now up to 2 coal plants. They're opening 2 major coal plants every single week in China, all over China, and then we're not allowed to use coal. Well, we have clean, beautiful coal more than anybody else. We have oil and gas more than anybody else. We have the most energy of any country in the world, including Saudi Arabia, including everybody, by a lot. and I took it to #1. We were #3, and I took it to #1 during my administration. And the reason that we were hurt so badly and the reason that we went into such incredible inflation during Biden is energy. It was also their bad spending, but energy, because they played around with this incredible thing that we had built, this administration had built, and the energy costs went through the roof. And when that went up, everything else followed. Now, if you look at what's happening, you got to see this today. I said we're going to try and get groceries down, right? An old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term. Eggs. So when I got in, the press went absolutely crazy the first week. They said, eggs have quadrupled in price. I said, I just got here. Tell me about it. And Brooke Rollins and our team did a great job, and eggs are down now 79%, and they're all over the place. And this was a problem that somebody else would have taken a long time to cure. We have energy is down. We have interest rates are down. We have groceries, meaning food is down. We have everything is down at levels that nobody ever thought possible. Energy looks like it's going to be in the $2.50 a gallon range, and maybe below that for a car. So for gasoline. So we're really doing amazing. I mean, we're cutting prices because prices got so high, people couldn't live. I mean, the prices for groceries, the prices for standard groceries, standard things were going through the roof. They couldn't live. And now those prices are coming down. So call them groceries, but that's down, energy's down, and interest rates are down. Everything's down. And the interest rates, the beauty there is when we refinance debt, you know, debt's become such a big factor in this country. We're going to start paying debt off with tariffs and other things. But it's such a big factor because the interest rate's so high. Well, now that's coming way down. So our budget's going to look a lot better because interest costs are way down. And I guess I've done that.
Many Israelis are watching you now on live show. Good. What is your specific way of getting the hostages out from the horrific captivity?
We are trying very hard to get the hostages out. We're looking at another ceasefire. We'll see what happens. But we want to get the hostages out. The Israeli people want the hostages out. More than anything, they want the hostages out. This man is working very hard with us to do that. I mean, I don't know. I hope he's being appreciated because he's been a great leader. He's working very, very hard on the hostages and many other things. And there are plenty of things you have to work on. It's a tough place in the world.
I have a good partner.
Yeah, you do have a good partner, and so do we. We're working very hard on the hostages.
If you're going to negotiate a new deal with Iran, can you elaborate how it's going to be more effective than the JCPOA?
Well, I can't really say that, but I think it'll be different and maybe a lot stronger. But they were so happy when we made that first deal because we did get a lot out. You know, I had people right in this office, this beautiful Oval Office. They came in, 10 people, hostages, you know that. And I said to them, so how was it? And the stories they told me, I mean, as an example, I said to them, was there any sign of love? You were there, 10 people. It's only 10, but it's pretty representative. Did the Hamas show any signs of, like, help or liking you? Did they wink at you? Did they give you a piece of bread extra? Did they give you a meal on the side, like, you know, you think of doing? Like would happen in Germany, would happen elsewhere. People would try and help people that were in unbelievable distress. They said no. I said, all of them. I said, did they ever wink at you like, you'll be okay? You're going to be okay? No, they didn't do that. They'd slap us. The hatred is unbelievable. And the lives, you know, they lived in a pipe, not really a tunnel, it was a pipe. And they always thought they were suffocating, they were going to suffocate. And then they'd open up the pipe, and it was like 3.5 feet high. This isn't, you know, we hear tunnels bad, but pipes are worse. And the stories I heard were incredible. But I just said, was there any sign of potential love or affection? And there were none whatsoever. It was amazing to me. There was nothing like, here, take this, it's a little extra meal or something. They lived like hell. I don't know. They seemed to be, they were amazing to me because they seemed to be pretty normal. They weren't scarred, but I guarantee underneath they have to be scarred. And one was there for 350 56 days. Another was there for about 180 days, you know, a long time. These are people that have been really, really horribly treated. I've never seen anything like it, actually. I was very surprised to hear the answer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there 2 or 3 countries that are on your list that you feel are farther along in getting their tariffs lowered?
I think there are many that want to get rid of tariffs right now. European Union, I mean, as badly as they've treated us, they've brought their car tariffs essentially off. I guess they brought it down to 2.5, and I hear maybe to nothing. But it's not only tariffs, it's non-monetary tariffs. It's tariffs where they put things on that make it impossible for you to sell a car. It's not a money thing. They make it so difficult, the standards and the tests. They drop a bowling ball on the top of your car from 20 feet up in the air, and if there's a little dent, they say, no, I'm sorry, your car doesn't qualify. When the same car from Germany or anything would dent likewise, unless you can have an army tank, it's going to dent. So they come up with rules and regulations that are just designed for one reason, that you can't sell your product in those countries, and we're not going to let that happen. Those are called non-monetary barriers. They make barriers that are so tough that it's impossible to qualify. So tariffs are a big part of it, but there's another big part of it, and that's barriers. They also do something else. They manipulate their currency, and they drive it down. They want to drive it. They want to have low currencies. You know, it sounds better to have a high currency, a strong dollar or whatever, but they bring their currency down, and when it competes with our currency, it's very hard to sell a tractor. It's very hard to sell product, because their currency is low and ours is much higher relatively. And so it makes it very hard. I speak to a lot of companies that do business, tractor companies, and they say it's so hard to sell because what they've done is they've lowered the yen, or they've lowered the yuan, or they've lowered their currency, so that it's very hard to compete. We don't want that either. So we have a lot of things that we're talking about, but we're going to fix it properly, and it's going to be fair to everybody. And in the end, I think we're going to have a world that does a lot better, you know. But they have to respect the United States, and nobody but me would do this. Nobody but me would do this. You know, it would be nice to serve a nice, easy term, but we have an opportunity to change the fabric of our country. We have an opportunity to reset the table on trade. We lose billions of dollars. We lose close to $2 trillion a year on trade. We lose $1 trillion a year to China. $1 trillion. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year on trade to China. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars overall, probably close to $2 trillion. Why would we do that? Number one, why would we do that? And then you have to say, is it sustainable? Then you hear about all of the people that say, well, deficits. If we have a deficit with the country, or if the country has a big surplus with us, like China has a massive surplus, that they take and they spend on their military. Well, we don't want that. I don't want them to take $500, $600 billion a year and spend it on their military. I don't want them spending money on their military. And I shouldn't have to spend money. We shouldn't have to spend it either. Because, you know, hopefully, and I said this to President Xi, hopefully it's money that we're never going to use. In other words, because we're not going to use those incredible weapons that we have and that they have. We don't want that. So it's going to be very interesting. It's the only chance our country will have to reset the table, because no other president would be willing to do what I'm doing or to even go through it. Now, I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end, but we are making tremendous progress with a lot of countries, and the countries that really took advantage of us are now saying, please negotiate. You know why? Because they're getting beaten badly because of what's happening. They're getting beaten badly. They're being devalued as countries. But it's the only chance we're going to have to reset the table on trade. And when we do, we're going to come out unbelievably well. We're going to have a strong country economically again. And we're going to have those factories that are empty all over the United States. We've lost 90,000 plants and factories. Think of this, 90,000, you wouldn't think it's possible, 90,000 plants and factories since NAFTA, which was, by the way, the worst trade deal ever ever developed, ever had by any country anywhere, NAFTA. And I terminated NAFTA. Everybody said it would be impossible. And I terminated it through Congress. We terminated it. You had to get it through Congress. It was a trap. It was a horrible thing, and we got it done. And we went to the USMCA, which was much better. The problem is they cheat. They cheat like crazy. Canada cheats, Mexico cheats, just one of those things. But we are resetting a table, and we're going to have great trade, and we're going to have a very strong country. Our country is going to be at a level that has maybe never been, or maybe, you know, our country was the strongest, believe it or not, from 1870 to 1913. You know why? It was all tariff-based. We had no income tax. Then in 1913, some genius came up with the idea of let's charge the people of our country, not foreign countries that are ripping off our country. And the country was never that kind of wealth. We had so much wealth, we didn't know what to do with our money. We had meetings, we had committees, and these committees worked tirelessly to study one subject. We have so much money. What are we going to do with it? Who are we going to give it to? And I hope we're going to be in that position again.
Mr. President, do you plan to reduce the tariffs that your government put on Israeli goods, 17%?
On where?
On Israeli goods, the 17%. Do you plan
Well,
to
we're
reduce
talking about a whole new trade. Maybe not. Maybe not. Don't forget, we help Israel a lot. You know, we give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. That's pretty good. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions. It's one of the highest of, and we give a lot of countries money. You wouldn't believe if I said we give Afghanistan a lot of money, do you? Because that was a Biden deal, another Biden deal. Not only did he embarrass us with that, but they give them billions of dollars, Afghanistan, right? So, but no, we take good care of our friends, and we don't take care of our enemies. We're not taking care of our enemies anymore, but we do take care of our friends.
Mr. Berman from the Times of Israel. The IDF is fighting again in the Gaza Strip. I myself might be called up in a month. Do you think that's the way to pressure Hamas to get to a deal? And do you think blocking humanitarian aid is also an effective pressure tactic?
Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, and I think it's something that we would be involved in, but you know, having a peace force like the United States there, controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing. Because right now, all it is for years and years, all I hear about is killing and Hamas and problems. And if you take the people, the Palestinians, and move them around to different countries, and you have plenty of countries that will do that, and you really have a freedom zone. You call it the freedom zone, a free zone, a zone where people aren't going to be killed every day. That's a hell of a place. It's a, you know what I call it, a great location that nobody wants to live in, because they really don't. And when they have good living, real living, where Hamas and all of the problems they have, the level of death on the Gaza Strip is just incredible. And I've said it. I don't understand why Israel ever gave it up. Israel owned it. It wasn't this man, so I can say it. He wouldn't have given it up. I know him very well. There's no way. They took oceanfront property and they gave it to people for peace. How did that work out? Not good.
Is the immigration, sorry, Mr. President, is the immigration plan still on the agenda?
Which immigration?
From Gaza. From Gaza.
All it is a concept that I had that I think is good, and now people are copying it. You know, maybe you want to tell people are talking about the Trump plan. Gee, why don't we do that? Would you like to answer that question?
I think what the president talked about is, first of all, to give people a choice. You know, Gazans were closed in, and any other place, including in arenas of battle. I mean, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or any other place, people could leave. Gaza was the only place where they locked them in. We didn't lock them in. They're locked in. And what is wrong with giving people a choice? Now, we've been talking, including over lunch, about some countries, I won't go into them right now, that are saying, you know, if Gazans want to leave, we want to take them in. And I think this is the right thing to do. If you give, you know, it's going to take years to rebuild Gaza. In the meantime, people can have an option. The president has a vision. countries are responding to that vision. We're working on it. I hope we'll have good news for you.
I will say people really do love that vision. It's a long-term vision, but so importantly is to have that be a safe field, because you're right smack in the middle of the Middle East. You're right along Israel. It should have never, ever been given away. It shouldn't have been given away by Israel. I don't know why they did it. I mean, I do know why, because they were promised peace, but that didn't work out too well, because it's one of the most dangerous pieces of land anywhere in the world. Gaza is one of the most dangerous places in the world. So they gave it away for a good intention, and it didn't work out that way. And a lot of people like my concept, but you know, there are other concepts that I like too. And there are some concepts I don't like. You know what I don't like? The way it is now. Because right now it's a dangerous death trap, Gaza. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Can you talk a little bit about your potential meeting with Vladimir Putin? Do you still plan to meet with him? Could that happen in Saudi Arabia? And maybe you could elaborate as well a little bit on not providing tariffs on Russia, sir.
So the reason we're not talking about tariffs with Russia is because we're not doing business essentially with Russia, because they're in a war. And I'm not happy about what's going on with the bombing, because they're bombing like crazy right now. They're bombing. I don't know what's happening there. That's not a good situation. So we're meeting with Russia. We're meeting with Ukraine. And we're getting sort of close. But I'm not happy with all the bombing that's going on the last week or so. Horrible. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing.
Can countries negotiate to get below 10%?
In terms of tariffs?
In terms of tariffs, yes.
Look, we've been ripped off and taken advantage of for 40, 50, 60 years. And the reason we got ripped off and the way they did it was tariffs. They would charge tariffs, massive numbers of dollars. And when you look at China, when I took over, it was at $507 billion they were making. I call it making. A lot of people say, oh, it doesn't mean anything. Having a surplus it means a lot, in my opinion. It's almost like a profit or loss statement. And when I took over, it was $507 billion that China was, this is originally, first term. And we were very, very tough on them because they were taking that money and they were building a military with it. Then when Biden came in, he let him get away with murder. He had no idea. I'll tell you what, that man had no idea what was happening, whether it was the border or China or anything else. He had no idea what was going on. And they went wild. China went wild. And the money they make is ridiculous, okay? It's just not gonna happen. And hopefully we'll get along with China. If we do, that's great. And if we don't, that's okay too. But we can't let that continue, because that's an abuse. They abused the poor people that sat in this seat. That poor Biden, he was abused by them. They took advantage of him, and I'm surprised. You know, they have smart people. They were radical left lunatics, but they're smart. I'm surprised they'd allow that to take, you know, to happen. But we are going to bring great trade, and we're going to be fair to other countries. And I will say this, virtually every country wants to negotiate. If I didn't do what I did over the last couple of weeks, you wouldn't have anybody wants to negotiate. We would have gone to these countries, you want to talk? And they were, well, we don't want to talk. Now they're coming to us. They're offering things like even Bibi, and this is unrelated because it's a different kind of a relationship, but he started off our conversation today that he's cutting all of the tariffs, he's cutting everything. He's going to get down to a free base. He's going to do things that, in all fairness, other countries, if they said that, would have never even thought about doing it. Now they're offering things to us that we would have never even thought of asking them for, because they're experiencing a lot of hurt. And the hurt is that they've taken advantage of us, and we finally fought back. Tariffs will make this country very rich. We're rich anyway, but we're rich in a certain way. We have $36 trillion in debt. I want to get rid of it, and we can do it quickly with proper deals. So when countries don't allow us to sell our product, but we allow them to sell their product, when they charge us massive amounts of money for the privilege of going into their country, those days are over. Okay.
Turkey
go
today.
ahead.
Me?
Sir?
Me? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. On Iran, two questions, please. First, if you can give us more details about where the meeting on Saturday is going to take place.
I can't tell you that. I can just tell you there's a major meeting going on between us and Iran, and that'll take place on Saturday, and it's at top level.
And the second question about this. A lot of people think that those talks are not going to lead anywhere because the Iranians will never give up their nuclear program.
I think that's a possibility, too.
If diplomacy fails, is the United States, under your leadership, ready to take military action to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and remove this threat?
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
So
Can't have
the US
it.
ready to
Right now,
take
we have
military
countries
action?
that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it. But I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that, too, as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks aren't successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case. Yeah.
Mr. President, on manufacturing, Mr. President.
Mr. President, was October 7th the death blow of the two-state solution, and would you consider classifying the Palestinian authorities a terrorist organization for its continued pay-for-slay terror financing payments?
So October 7th was a horrible day that some people, they deny it. Now, I can't believe they deny it from the standpoint of it. They do it because they think it's good politically. But October, I've seen the tapes. I've seen things that you don't want to see. October 7th was a horrible day, and it will go down as one of the really bad days in the history of the world. It was a horrible, horrible thing that happened. And they grabbed some of these people. I'll give you an example. When I was with the 10 hostages a few weeks ago, I said, so how many are there? 59. I said, oh, so 59, so we can get 59. They sort of knew the territory pretty good. And I said, how are they doing? They said, well, only 24 are living, the rest are dead. And these are young people largely. Young people don't die. You know, young people have an amazing ability to live. They can live through horrible things, but these are young people. And when they said that 24 are living and the rest are dead. And you know, I've had parents come up, Israeli parents largely. We have some Americans, and I guess we have one left. Alex, we have the one left. But I've had Israeli parents come up to me at events and say, my son is there. I said, well, how's he doing? Well, he's dead. But would you do me the biggest favor ever? Could you bring his body back home? They talked about a young dead boy and a young dead girl like they were living. And that could have something to do with religion. That could have something to do with, I guess maybe any parent would be, but I was surprised. They said, sir, my son is dead. It is just as important to bring that body back home. I asked that question as if he were alive. So you have a lot of them dead, and we'll be able to bring them back. But it's a horrible thing that's happened. These are young, largely young people. Some old ones too, frankly. And those people have lived in hell. When they came off, the second group that came out, they looked like they just got out of a concentration camp. They looked exactly like the pictures that I'd see from the 1940s, the concentration camps. And then they got a little bit better, you know, but that second group, those people came out and I said, this is unbelievable. We're going back into a chapter in history that is one of the worst ever. It's really very bad. Okay?
Mr. President, thank you. You've said it could take 2 years to get American manufacturing fully up to speed in response to these tariffs. What happens in the meantime? Should Americans be prepared potentially for years?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happens. We have now $7 trillion. Think of this, $7 trillion of commitments from companies wanting to go in, from Apple to many, many companies.
But that takes time.
Many from Taiwan. What?
It takes time to
Of course it takes time. Well, are you asking me a question or are you telling me? Yeah, it takes time. You know, you got to build a thing called a factory. You have to build your energy. You have to do a lot of things. I'm giving them energy. You know, we're going to let them build their own power plants. They'll be their own. Essentially, they're going to be in charge of the power plant because our power is not reliable enough. You have a grid that's old and susceptible to a lot of things, including bombing and weather and a lot of other things. And we're going to give them record timing in terms of approvals of electric plants. Most of them want to build electric plants. We need massive amounts of electricity if we're going to compete with China and others. And interestingly, we're way ahead right now in the AI race with China. But the way we lose that race is if we can't give them electric. But we have more plants being built. We have everything. We're doing so great. And we want to keep it that way. And tariffs will be an important part of it. But one of the other things, Lee Zeldin's doing a fantastic job, head of environmental protection. And he's doing very rapid approvals for people to get, for big companies that are going to build a plant that's going to cost billions of dollars. And we're going to get them their approvals. They have to be environmentally perfect, everything good, but they're going to be in record time, a matter of months versus a matter of many, many years. Okay?
But in the meantime,
Lisa Rozowski from Haaretz. Turkey claims it will stabilize the situation in Syria.
Turkey?
Yeah. Israel doesn't want Turkey to influence Syria. What do you think? Do you think Turkey's influence in Syria can actually make it a better, more peaceful country, or vice versa?
Well, I have great relations with a man named Erdogan. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
And I happen to like him, and he likes me, and I know the press will get very angry. He likes Erdogan, but I do, and he likes me, and we've never had a problem, and we've gone through a lot, and we've never had a problem. We've always gotten, as you remember, we got our minister back from Turkey. You remember that? And this was a big deal at the time, and we got him back. And I told the prime minister, I said, just, Bibi, if you have a problem with Turkey, I really think I'm going to be able to work it out. You know, I have a very, very good relationship with Turkey and with their leader, and I think we'll be able to work it out. So I hope that's not going to be a problem. I don't think it will be a problem. Now, with that being said, I believe it was Turkey, and I said that to him. I said it. I said, congratulations. You've done what nobody's been able to do in 2,000 years. You've taken over Syria with different names, but same thing. I said, you've taken it over. He's taken it over through surrogates. He goes, no, it was not me. I said, it was you, but that's okay. You don't have to say, well, sort of maybe it was me, okay. But what he did, look, he's a tough guy, and he's very smart, and he did something that nobody was able to do. You know, you got to hand it to him. Any problem that you have with Turkey, I think I can solve. I mean, as long as you're reasonable. You have to be reasonable. We have to be reasonable. Thank you very much, everyone.
And that was President Donald Trump at the White House meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, taking reporter questions on a variety of topics, including tariffs. And on that note, President Trump's sweeping tariffs are intended to, quote, supercharge our domestic industrial base. So the question is, how do existing American manufacturers feel about the new trade policy? NTD's Chris Spears spoke with Andrew Turnland, owner of Turnland Products, which produces HVAC components on U.S. soil.
Andrew Turnland, thank you so much for joining us. What is the sentiment towards these tariffs amongst true American manufacturers like your company?
Yes, I think overall it's generally positive. Obviously, to the extent that some of their main key components may be directly affected by these tariffs, that creates some concern, just not knowing what that means for overall supply, overall pricing, costs, all those things. But overall, I think truly, whether they're manufacturers or even for consumers, my guess is that these will have a relatively muted effect compared to the hysteria that people are worried about right now.
Really? That's interesting. I mean, is that the case even for companies that are getting a lot of their products overseas?
Yes. So I can think of some specific products that I sell. So I sell a product that sells for $24.89, and my cost for that item from a factory over in China that makes it completely ready to go for sale is $2.60. So even if I see let's say a 50% tariff on that item, just to pick a number, I'm looking at my cost increase in $1.30. Now, maybe I will raise pricing, maybe I won't. I know that previously, when the first round of tariffs that came from the Trump administration in his previous term, a large number of manufacturers that I know were able to have their factories overseas, particularly in China, absorb a huge number of that. There are certain mechanisms that really strong American brands and manufacturers are able to use to mitigate these tariffs so that they're not as overwhelmingly disastrous as some people fear.
So you think that things could turn out better than the stock market is predicting right now?
My base case is that the American consumer is very strong, and that if there is inflation in some specific areas, they will either be able to substitute or they will be able to pay those higher prices. I also think that American brands and manufacturers and companies are very good at being competitive. Not only will they be able to use better supply chain and lean on manufacturers to help offset some possible need for price increases to maintain margins, but I also think they'll get leaner and meaner overall. And so I have a lot of faith in American companies and their leadership to be able to, when pressed, to be able to find ways to be able to make the month, to be able to get the sales they need to be able to maintain the margins, to maintain their employees and maintain their profits. This is just another challenge. And overall, if we can do that and have a strong consumer, I think we could end up with a policy that actually does do a lot of what the administration expects and what they want, and be able to do it with not nearly as much angst and difficulty as the stock market seems to project.
Andrew, would you say that you're in the minority in your view on these tariffs?
Yeah, I think overall, as a genuine U.S. manufacturer that forms the metal, welds the steel, all those sort of things actually in an American factory, we are seeing how these tariffs can affect us. And overall, the costs of inputs is relatively minimal, and our chance to expand is very positive. We're meeting this week to build another 30,000 square foot factory. I may be premature, and maybe some of these changes will affect the economy a lot sooner, but looking at the stock market and how quickly they're reacting compared to my expectations as a U.S. manufacturer, we're just not in the same place. So I'm not saying that I may be wrong. But as of this point, we're going full steam ahead because my belief in the strength of the American consumer in this moment in time and the strength in American companies to be able to meet the needs of the consumer is still very, very full. And so with that full belief that we will be able to adjust to these tariffs, I think that overall, I'm expecting us to have a really good year in 2025 and beyond.
Andrew Chernland, thank you so much for your insight on this, and thank you for your time.
Trapped between the land and sea, Audi car shipments are being held at U.S. ports as the car maker assesses the impacts of new tariffs. We have that and more after this break.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Gone Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
people's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're going to benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
All right, let's talk about today's business matters. China has 1 day to decide whether it wants additional 50% tariffs from the United States. On Truth Social, President Trump threatened to impose the additional tariffs on China if it does not withdraw its retaliatory tariffs of 34%. So in the post, Trump said China has until tomorrow to reverse course. If not, he said the U.S. will impose the additional tariffs effective Wednesday. Trump added that China's requested meetings will be terminated, while he said negotiations with other countries will start immediately. And the U.S.'s second largest regional airline is set to take flight. Republic Airways and Mesa Airlines have agreed to merge in an all-stock deal. So right now, Republic operates under American, Delta, and United, while Mesa works with the United Express brand. The newly combined company will operate about 300 aircraft with some 1,200 daily departures. The company will stick with the name Republic Airways Holdings Incorporated and will be run by Republic President and CEO Brian Bedford. For now, they plan to keep their current bases and routes until they receive a single FAA operating certificate. And luxury cars are essentially idling as Audi works to figure out how the company will be affected by auto tariffs. Volkswagen-owned Audi is holding its cars in U.S. ports right now. A spokesperson told dealers in a memo that it would freeze shipments from April 2nd until further notice. Audi is heavily impacted by President Trump's auto tariffs. Its best-selling U.S. model, the Q5, is produced in Mexico. As for its remaining models, those all come from Europe and other countries. A spokesperson said Volkswagen has around 37,000 vehicles in its U.S. inventory, and that is enough for about 2 months of sales. British car maker Jaguar Land Rover is pausing shipments to the U.S. for a month over President Trump's tariffs. The Trump administration placed tariffs of 25% on all imported cars. The tariffs went into effect on Thursday. A spokesperson for Jaguar Land Rover called the U.S. an important market, but the automaker says it is enacting the shipment pause in April as it, quote, addresses the new trading terms. According to the company, Jaguar Land Rover has over 200 dealerships in the United States. And launching a lawsuit to prevent a lawsuit. Daily Pay is suing New York's Attorney General Letitia James. This is in an attempt to stop a lawsuit that claims its product is an illegal loan. 2 years ago, James started investigating the Earned Wage Access Industry, or EWA. So Daily Pay describes EWA as giving employees access to their earned pay before regulatory or regularly scheduled paydays. The company says it charges a fee to expedite money transfers, similar to ATM withdrawal fees or Venmo transfers. Daily Pay says it does not create a debt obligation for workers. New hope for a promised merger between Japan's Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel. President Trump has ordered a U.S. National Security Panel to take a fresh look at the bid. In a memo, the president said that the Committee on Foreign Investment will decide if any further action may be appropriate. Former President Joe Biden had blocked the merger over national security concerns. The two companies sued, alleging Biden's prejudice influenced the decision from the committee who reviews foreign investments. Investors took Trump's call for a fresh review to mean he's considering greenlighting the merger. And more on the Trump tariff impact. Oil prices plummeted to their lowest level since 2021, and base metal prices in China also tumbled. Here's the story.
Oil slid 3% on Monday to its weakest level in 4 years. Brent futures and US West Texas Intermediate crude futures hit their lowest since April 2021. Both benchmarks have lost more than 10% over the last week. It follows a large drop in oil prices Friday as markets worry US-China trade tensions could cause a recession. They fear it could see a fall in demand for crude while OPEC Plus looks to increase supply soon. Oil prices are an important indicator for Russia's financial health.
Of course, this is an indicator that is very important for us, very important for filling our budget. And of course, we are following the situation very closely, which is currently extremely turbulent, tense and emotionally overloaded.
Commodity markets, including metals, also fell. Base metal prices in China dropped, with copper on the Shanghai Futures Exchange falling 6%, hitting its lowest in more than 3 months. Gold climbed to a record peak last week, but later dropped amid a wider market sell-off. However, gold prices pared earlier losses Monday as some safe haven demand filtered through, and analysts held an upbeat outlook for bullion.
The rich are getting much richer. The 2020s have been great years for billionaires, starting right after the pandemic, when their total wealth made a significant leap. And one place where billionaires have prospered most is the United States. NTD Sean Marshall takes a look into where all the billionaires are coming from.
According to the Forbes 2025 billionaires list, the United States harbors the most billionaires on Earth.
Billionaires are exploding. We're talking about them all the time. The number of them is increasing dramatically.
But they're not coming out of nowhere. Business strategist Melissa Franks says the best way to understand where billionaires are coming from is to look at their histories.
And 25 years ago, most of them weren't even millionaires. So really what's happening is it's a multiple decades long journey to go from the millionaire or aspiring millionaire to billionaire.
And there are a couple reasons why the United States has more billionaires than any other country. Frank says America's economy is strong and diverse, and that we excel in many industries like manufacturing, tech, and energy, not just one.
And what that allows is for these millionaires and billionaires to network with each other on their home turf and help each other invest and have new ventures go through, because we're all operating in the same local economy to propel these industries forward. And the United States is the best breeding ground for that to happen in a nimble, efficient way within all of the regulatory guidelines that exist to fund and grow businesses.
The traditions and family values of the elite, once held as closely guarded secrets, are now available in books and on the internet. But the average person looking to generate wealth might not know where to start. That's when a professional financial strategist like Frank's comes in handy. She mentions that there are many processes that billionaires engage in on the journey from millionaire to billionaire, which they don't often talk about.
And nobody's talking about how they actually do it. They're just talking about the results at the end. And that's the secret.
So there's another world and way of doing things that most of us should probably study a little more closely before starting our side hustles and business ventures, which is to look into exactly how wealthy families have been doing things for generations. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Okay, we're bringing in our guest today, Brian Kuderna. He's a certified financial planner and author of the book, What Should I Do With My Money? So good afternoon, Brian. So let's dive into some practical advice on budgeting and saving money, especially with so much economic uncertainty right now. So I would like to know some of your tips on how to save money. How do you recommend structuring a budget that is easy to stick to over time?
Sure, and thank you for having me. I think one of the most important things is just the classic ideal of dollar cost averaging. And all that means is doing your investments or whatever your portfolio allocation is on a systematic basis. So with most of my clients, everything we do on a monthly basis, monthly contributions into various retirement plans or brokerage accounts. And that takes a lot of the guesswork and the timing out of the equation, especially when you have the turmoil that we're going through right now. We can say, stick with the process, stay the course, and remove that emotion from the planning. And I think that is always the best course of action.
Is there a rule of thumb for what percentage of income should go to needs, wants, and savings?
Yes, that's a great question too. I always like to see my clients have a 20% gross savings rate. All right, so think if your household is bringing in $200,000 a year gross between your two salaries, perhaps, then that means 20%, that's $40,000 a year that should be saved somewhere, whether it's the 401k, the IRA, the whole life plan, rental properties. The different vehicles that we want to use are how we go from good to great, but the baseline has to be that good habit. And like I always tell people, keep it simple, 20% gross savings rate. You do that year over year, you are going to be on the fast track.
Okay, what are some of your strategies for handling, unexpected expenses without derailing your budget?
Yeah, so one of the best ways to handle that, frankly, is to be prepared. Okay, like I often say, like in jiu-jitsu, when you get stuck in a tough position and you say, hey, coach, how do I get out of this? And they say, well, don't end up there. It's the same thing with unexpected expenses or credit card debt. If you're prepared, cash is king, okay? If you have liquidity, if you have a buffer ahead of time, that allows you with a rainy day fund to handle those unexpected expenses. So just like going into this year, when you say, well, what do I do now with my portfolio? All right, if you made adjustments back in December or January, you're ready for this. If you didn't, now we have to kind of weather the storm. And liquidity is the thing that can always see you through tough times. So that's where people, you can't, undervalue cash. You really, really got to be able to always have a healthy 6 months of expenses, emergency fund ready at all times.
Okay, let's talk about this emergency fund. What would you say is the ideal size of that fund considering today's economy?
Yeah, so I think the ideal size, kind of like I alluded to, is 6 months of your expenses. So if you just take a moment one day, run through your budget and say, hey, what's my credit card bill usually look like each month? What's my mortgage or my rent? Tally up all those fixed expenses. Maybe you add in a little buffer. And if you say, hey, it looks like as a household, we're spending $5,000, $6,000 a month just living. All right, then 6 times that, you should be having $30,000 to $40,000 in cash. And when I say cash, that's your checking, savings, money market, money that you can access in an instant. It's there, it's not at risk. And I know some people, they may be hearing that like, oh, I'm not even close to that. That's okay. That's why it needs to be a goal. Okay. Rome wasn't built in a day. Keep that as a goal. Let's try and get there, then maintain. And then that can allow you to proceed to more investments and more fun things.
Okay, any thoughts you have on the tariffs? What's the impact going to be on people's wallets?
Yeah, so the tariffs, I think, just came in last Wednesday, I think a lot harsher than most of us had expected. So there's 2 things going on. One, it's hitting people's net worth when they look at their portfolio, obviously. And then the other is going to be the cost of living, which affects everybody, whether you're high net worth or you're just getting by. So I think what's going to happen is, so many of these tariffs, if you look at the international rate that we were charging out there, it was somewhere around 3%, I believe. That went up as of last Wednesday to about 23%. Okay, so that 20% increase on average of just international tariffs, that is going to get passed on in a number of ways. You're going to have the exporting country and the exporting manufacturer trying to work within that. You're going to have the importing company, whether that's Nike or Apple or Microsoft, saying, okay, how are we going to eat some of that expense, that new tax? And then inevitably, some of that will be passed on to the consumer. Okay, so they won't notice immediately a 20% hike on the sticker price, but they will see a portion of that. That's inevitable. So I think what everybody's hoping for right now is there any way that these other countries come to the White House or Donald Trump goes to them and says, hey, let's negotiate this. Let's find a happy medium, and perhaps we reduce or just waive some of these tariffs. And then I think that will allow the economy to really get back into stride.
Okay, two things, Brian. So basically you're saying the only two options is that if companies eat the cost of the input costs increasing with the tariffs, or consumers pay the cost, right? Is that what you're saying? And what are some of the tips that you have to help people who are falling behind on payments, for example?
Yep. Yeah. So there's those two parts. And the third is the exporting company. So where it originates, the manufacturer, they're probably going to have to try and work with their customer base as well. So I think you're going to see three different areas where there has to be some absorbing of that new cost. But to your question, what can the consumer do? They're going to have to become a more astute shopper. Okay, if you were looking at, hey, I liked getting my my Nikes, my kids' new basketball sneakers for $100, and now those are going up to $130, $140, and you just extrapolate that over all the goods, products, and services that we use every day, I think it's just going to encourage people to start pivoting and saying, okay, maybe in certain scenarios I can't get the name brand product. Maybe I do need to go to Target or to Walmart and say, what other deals are out there? And it's going to be a period that folks are going to have to kind of get acclimated to and work through and maybe become a bit more of a bargain shopper than they were previously, at least until things start to settle. And whatever we see as this new normal, then we can adapt and we can kind of readjust to what we're used to. But in this transition period, for most people that do have to pay mind to their wallet, you're going to have to be a better shopper and also a saver. You might have to tighten the belt in some areas.
Well, all right, Brian. Great insight today. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And Apple is trying to shut a backdoor order to its encrypted cloud storage systems. The Investigatory Powers Tribunal has confirmed that the tech giant is appealing the order from the British government. In February, the Washington Post reported that Britain issued a technical capability notice to Apple. It called on the company to enable access to encrypted messages and photos. Britain's Interior Ministry said this is to prevent serious crime and would not affect freedom of speech. Apple declined to comment but referred to a previous statement which it said would never build a so-called backdoor. The Trump administration has shed a proposal for weight loss drugs to be covered by Medicare. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid said it did not move forward with the Biden-era proposal. It would have allowed more Americans to afford new medications in the GLP-1 class. These drugs have been shown to reduce weight by as much as 20% and prevent type 2 diabetes, but they cost as much as $1,000 a month without insurance coverage. Right now, Medicare covers the drugs such as Lilly's Mounjaro and Novo Nordisk's Ozempic for diabetes, but not the versions approved for obesity. President Trump threatened to further increase tariffs on China on Monday, raising the possibility of further escalation in trade tensions that has already wiped trillions of dollars from global markets. Earlier, I discussed the impact of Trump's tariffs with Christian Briggs. He's an economist and CEO at Hard Asset Management. Take a look. So we've seen trillions in market value wiped out. Why is the market so concerned about tariffs?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, but let's go right to the heart of it. Tariffs can be used in such a way to leverage a negotiation between two parties, in this case, two different countries or continents, in order to create a playing field that is fair for everybody. But the investors want to know how much and how long will the 34% that China just levied on us be in effect for? How long will it take Trump and President Xi Jinping to determine that what's best interest for both countries is a little bit less aggressive tariff? It's almost like a little bit of a fight, kind of a little bit of a respectable fight, mind you, because countries do need each other. But the investing community right now is nervous because what it does is it brings uncertainty to the PE ratios, obviously price to earnings, and will companies like Caterpillar or Deere or even Boeing be able to sustain the current market anticipation of what their earnings are, their revenues, in light of all of these tariffs? Because it's an uncertainty. And remember, uncertainty, nobody in the stock market likes uncertainty.
So, Christian, you've said before that certain income groups in the U.S. are already in recession. But if the tariffs stay for longer, but do you think we'll see higher income groups experience a recession due to these tariffs?
Absolutely. Let's talk about that. The lower bottom half of America, that 25 to say 35%, their wages absolutely did not keep up during the Biden administration, one of the most inflationary fiscal policies in over 40 years, not realizing that the inflation does not hurt as much the top 25% of the income holders. It's the bottom 50% that really get taxed. Their wages aren't typically at the same growth projectile rates as the top 10, 20%, or even the top 5%. So we are in a recession in the bottom. You know, when you look at credit card delinquencies, foreclosures, car repossessions, that's in that bottom half, especially in the subprime market. On automobiles, there is now starting to see some of the highest increases in both repossessions and 30, 60, and 90-day late payments. So the bottom half's in a recession. The top half, I'm not so sure we're going to see it as effectively and quickly, but everything is going to slow down. When you see Restoration Hardware, which is a high-end furniture manufacturer and retailer, give a lower guidance, and it was considerably lower guidance, that tells you right there that top 5, 10, 15% of America has already started slowing their spending. It may not come to a grinding halt, but I can tell you definitively, if this thing lasts more than 30 or 60 days, we will have issues from the very top to the very bottom.
Do you have a ballpark for how long the benefits will start to kick in?
Okay, great question again, because a lot of people don't look like we should look. That's down the road. So I would say the benefits of the tariffs, provided they're negotiated in a method that is equal or even give us a little bit more of a favor, which I believe Trump's going to come out of the better end of the deal for America, which means all America wins on this. The benefits will be seen in about 12 months. It takes effectively time. And I'll give you a very good statistic that proves the point. In 2018, when Trump levied those heavy tariffs, especially on China, and the rest of the world obviously followed suit, China was the behemoth that he was really going after, because the trade deficit, right now with all of our trading partners, we're running over, $1.3, $1.4 trillion trade deficit. So the benefits are going to be seen. But remember, in 18, when those tariffs hit, within less than 22 months, or within a period of about 20 to 22 months, we were able to reestablish, whether it was bringing back or organically grown, 462,000 manufacturing jobs. These were high-paying jobs. Had COVID not hit, our analysts right now were predicting about 600,000 jobs. So the tariffs can work, surgically done, which he did, done in a time and a manner, which he is. I think the benefit's going to be massive, provided that China comes to the table and doesn't prolong this trade war.
Okay, Christian, great insight as always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
President Trump said yesterday that China was close to approving a deal for the sale of TikTok. He said the communist nation backed out over the new reciprocal tariffs on Chinese imports. TikTok is required to divest its U.S. assets or face a nationwide ban. Trump has effectively paused that ban until mid-June. Parent company ByteDance said last week that it was discussing a potential solution with the U.S. government. It says any agreement with Washington will be subject to approval under Chinese law. Trump last week extended the deadline for TikTok to divest from its Beijing-based parent company in 75 days. Several bidders have expressed interest in purchasing the social media app. Those include Amazon and a group led by OnlyFans founder Tim Stokely. Workers in the Hollywood film and television industry rallied yesterday, saying California isn't doing enough to encourage more production work in Los Angeles. as the industry's rebound has been slow since the end of the 2023 acting strike. NTD Sean Marshall has more.
Hollywood, costume designers, set builders, musicians, producers, and business owners attended a rally on Sunday, urging California legislators to increase tax incentives and enact other measures to encourage more film and TV production in and around Los Angeles. Producers and actors were there too. Several wore t-shirts with a quote from The Wizard of Oz, "There's no place like home." Hundreds gathered at a local soundstage to make their case to bring back the production opportunities that have been fleeing to other states. Workers were hoping for a production rebound in Los Angeles after the 2023 strikes by writers and actors, but the comeback has been slow. Gavin Newsom, California's Democratic governor, has proposed boosting the state's film and TV tax credits to $750 million a year, up from $330 million. Advocates support the expansion, but also want other measures, including making it easier to get permits. Many speakers said Hollywood was filled with middle-class workers, not the wealthy celebrities that are the public face of the industry. They also noted that less production takes a toll on local businesses, such as caterers and dry cleaners. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Okay, on to markets. S&P 500 closed lower today, and this is after a volatile session. And it comes as investors' fears of an economic slowdown and rising inflation. And this was intensified following President Trump's firm stance on tariffs. His threat to raise levies on China as well added to the market anxiety. So since Trump announced sweeping tariffs last week, U.S. markets have suffered major losses. S&P 500 fell 10%, 10.5% to be exact, in 2 days, wiping out around $5 trillion in value. This is the worst drop since March 2020. And the Dow is now in correction territory, and the NASDAQ has technically entered a bear market. And that's it on Business Matters today. Big controversy around a new tolling system coming to the New Jersey Turnpike. Could your Easy Pass fall into the hands of Chinese Communist Party officials? A data deep dive into transportation company in the spotlight after the break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man, because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court has responded to President Trump's request not to order Kilmar Abrego Garcia to be returned from El Salvador. The Supreme Court sided with the Maryland judge's order for his return. It means El Salvador must now return Garcia to the U.S. He was deported last month due to an administrative error. The White House maintains that Garcia is part of the foreign terrorist organization MS-13. The Trump administration has until 5 p.m. tomorrow to respond to this latest ruling. On to transportation. If you use Easy Pass, listen up. A company that is set to handle the new tolls on the New Jersey Turnpike might be tied to Communist China. That could spell trouble for you, given the sensitive information loaded onto your transponder. Our data reporter, Kevin Hogan, is looking into this. Kevin, give us a rundown of this contract and why there is so much controversy over it.
Well, this is a big deal. It's a $1.7 billion deal, and it's been approved. The bid has. It's unclear if they'll retain the contract. But the big question is, does this company have ties to the Chinese Communist Party? Because again, we've seen the Chinese Communist Party use various means to try to gain access to American sensitive data. Think DeepSeek, think TikTok. Is this another one of them? That's what congressmen in New Jersey are trying to find out. So this is New Jersey Congressman. He's saying that the Chinese Communist Party has made it abundantly clear that it is willing to leverage technology to undermine our national security and collect data on American citizens. That's Josh Gottheimer, and he's a Democrat, and he's raising the alarm right now talking about this. And so he's asking to find out, what is this company, and what is their actual foreign ownership structure? He wants to know, because again, we're going to go into the links here of exactly how this company is now, how TransCore is actually, who they have to answer to and where their data could possibly end up. And that's what you're seeing right here. So TransCore, it's a Tennessee-based company, but it has a big backstory because it goes all the way back to ST Engineering, which is a subsidiary of Temasek, right? And that has ties to Singapore, and some of those Singaporean government officials have ties to the Chinese Communist Party in China. So again, that's the link that we're looking at here, and that's what Congressman Gottheimer wants to know, whether or not any information taken by TransCore could end up in the Chinese Communist Party's hands. So when you look at the bids, that's where another bit of this controversy starts to unfold, because you could see that for this New Jersey Turnpike polling system, TransCore's final bid at about $1.7 billion was eventually approved, but there was a lower bidder, and that is Conduent, and that came in at about $1.5 billion. So if you say, well, if they both provide the same security, allegedly, or if they have the same ability to procure the product, why would you go with a higher bidder? And there's also more questions surrounding this. The New Jersey Vindicator also points out that the initial bid that TransCore put out was over $2 billion, but it wasn't until the New Jersey Turnpike Authority went and did some behind closed doors deals to get that initial bid knocked down. And again, even that final bid was still not the lowest bidder. So there's a big question as to whether or not the actual final bidding process was fully transparent when all is included. Now, when you look at how big of a share that TransCore has of the total tolling services in North America, you see this right here. TransCore is coming in at just over 12%. So that is a massive share. So it's not just that this is some random company that got a bid to develop the polling system on the New Jersey Turnpike. No, it is a very large company, and even Fox Business reports that 70% of all the polls in the United States were administered through TransCore, and that was back in 2021. So there may be some discrepancies as to how the DI market is reporting this, whether that's the number of tolls or it's the total volume of tolls. But in either case, this goes to show that this TransCore company is very big, and it is now under the spotlight for these federal lawmakers. And at the same time, TransCore is pushing back on these claims, saying that, one, all of its products are made in the United States. And not only that, but also that it's the only tolling services company used in the United States in which all of its products are made in the USA. And it also has security agreements with the Department of Justice and the Department of Treasury, so that they've already checked out under those processes. Now, we've reached out to the Department of Justice to ask them when was the last time they conducted an audit on TransCore, and not only that, but furthermore, whether or not they have been aware of these allegations against TransCore with its alleged ties to the Chinese Communist Party. They declined to comment, citing these confidentiality requirements. And the Department of Treasury, they haven't responded to request for comment yet. If they do, we'll let you know. But they have a division called CFIUS, which investigates foreign investment of United States projects. And so they have checked out, according to TransCore's CEO, Whit Hall, through that CFIUS program. So again, we have to still wait for more details to emerge in this deal.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Next, the House of Representatives this week will consider the Senate-approved budget resolution, which includes different instructions for spending cuts than House Republicans agreed to. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, has more on the story.
It's a brutal Republican pincer move. Donald Trump's raised costs on the one side, and Senate Republicans are cutting Medicaid and pushing billionaire tax breaks on the other.
Lawmakers are pushing back against President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill, the reconciliation bill the Republican lawmakers are drafting to push through President Trump's legislative agenda.
Ranking Member Meeks, a Democrat, has moved forward with a discharge petition, a procedural effort to put that bill on the floor. How far will they go on the Republican side to be loyal to Trump over loyalty to country, the economy, and their own constituents?
Democratic lawmakers are pushing to strip President Trump's powers to levy tariffs on other countries without congressional approval. A similar effort is underway in the Senate.
If we continue to see the stock market go a certain direction, or if we see inflation or unemployment shift in a bad way, I think then this bill becomes a very viable bill. So it will not pass tomorrow or maybe in the next couple of weeks, but this will be in the queue that we can use.
President Trump has already said he would veto such a bill, and the majority of House Republican lawmakers have voiced their support for President Trump's tariff and tax cut plan.
So we have to pay a little bit more for American-made products or products made by our allies, and I think that's the price we're going to have to pay, because China is our greatest adversary. I don't want to have my children or grandchildren living in a world dominated by the Communist Chinese Party.
So I think if you combine that with tax policy of making these tax cuts permanent for working folks, you combine that with energy dominance, you combine that with regulatory reform, you can combine that with not paying illegal immigrants taxpayer dollars, with a fair trade policy, we're going to have prosperity in this country.
House Republican leadership is expected to put the Senate-approved budget resolution to a vote on the House floor this week. The Senate-approved budget resolution calls for $4 billion in spending cuts, but House Republican spending hawks are looking for $1.5 trillion in spending cuts. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Nearly 100 bomb threats made against a U.S.-based classical Chinese dance group. Who is behind the extensive attacking campaign? A police investigation in Taiwan now reveals a possible link with China's tech giant Huawei. Here's a closer look.
New York-based Shen Yun Performing Arts is now touring Taiwan. However, several government agencies and organizations in Taiwan received a series of threatening emails. Those stated, quote, "There would be shootings or bombings if Shen Yun performances are not canceled." As of April 4th, a total of 13 such threats have been reported. Taiwan's Criminal Police Bureau has formed an cross-agency task force to investigate. They traced the source of the emails to the vicinity of a Huawei research institute in China's northwestern Xi'an city. According to the police in Taiwan, the emails could have been sent by people related to the Chinese tech giant Huawei. They didn't rule out the possibility that they were sent from the Chinese Communist Party's cyber army based in that area. Shen Yun is dedicated to the revival of China's 5,000 years of traditional culture. The performance depicts the ongoing persecution of spiritual group Falun Gong in mainland China that Beijing has been trying to cover up. The threatening emails in Taiwan are among about 100 targeting the company since last year when it toured the United States and Europe.
When we got leaked documents from China, from the Ministry of State Security and Ministry of Public Security, and they spoke of a well-coordinated and extensive effort to completely destroy Shen Yun and the broader Falun Gong community in the United States. A sort of endgame scenario. We've seen large-scale attacks in a campaign by the New York Times with no less than 10 articles attacking Shen Yun. And we've seen horrifying bomb threats, death threats, rape threats.
On March 30th, Shen Yun received a bomb threat hours before its last performance in Claremont, California. The venue was immediately evacuated. A similar evacuation took place at the John F. Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. on February 20th. The bomb threat, just as those made to other theaters, turned out to be fake. In response to a question from NTD regarding the bomb threat at the Kennedy Center, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt condemned such actions.
Don't disrupt it. This administration will take that very seriously and hold you accountable. We obviously condemn any violence or threats of violence against American institutions.
The State Department also denounced Beijing's intimidation campaign against Shen Yun. In a recent statement to the Epoch Times, the department says its annual International Religious Freedom Report documents incidents of interference against Falun Gong practitioners and Shen Yun Performing Arts in many countries.
That's it for today. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Mott. Be sure to stay with us for NTD Evening News at 6 p.m.